Jason Weaver, happy to have you, my man.
Hey man, I'm happy to be here. It's an honor to be on Art of Dialogue. Big fan of the show, man. So thank you for having me. I'm glad we could make this happen.
Oh man, it's an honor having you on the platform, man. I mean, I've been watching your work since I was a kid, man.
Oh man. Oh no, man. Thank you. As soon as I got the call from Omar Gooden, OG, and I'd seen his interview as well. And he was like, "No, man, definitely got to sit down with Art. He's a great guy." And of course, I was definitely down because I watch a lot of the episodes on the show. Definitely appreciate and respect your work and the type of interviews that you conduct and that you give. So, nah, man, I'm really excited and happy to be here. And thanks to your viewers as well, whoever chooses to tune in and check it out, man. I appreciate them as well.
Oh man, definitely, man, definitely. Hey yo, do you know most people they say you had the best depiction of Michael Jackson out of anybody? You know that, yo?
You know what, man? Throughout the years, I've received a lot of compliments regarding my performance with portraying Michael Jackson in Jackson's American Dream. um I'm honored whenever people approach me on the street and they compliment me for the work that I did, as well as the rest of the cast and the crew. um Man, because we put in a lot of hours, man, a lot of hours of rehearsal, a lot of hours on set. um it was definitely a real gig, man, and portraying an iconic figure or performer like Michael Jackson and how he was during that time, how big he was during that time. There's a lot of pressure, of course, stepping into those shoes or filling those shoes, because they have such a amazing fan base. But the Jackson family fan base, in particular Michael Jackson's fan base, it's like they're no joke. So I already knew coming into that they were going to be very analytical when it came down to his portrayal. But thankfully, I was able to pull it off by the grace of God. It was just a lot of rehearsal, a lot of preparation, a lot of great people around me that helped me step up to the plate. One, including my mother, our choreographer, God rest his soul, Michael Peters, who was also Michael's choreographer back then. So it was a lot of people that helped me step up to the plate. I can't take that credit by myself.
How did you get the role?
Man, I got it auditioning here in Chicago. Yeah, originally I heard about them casting for the Jackson's American Dream when I was working in a recording studio that my cousin Laney Stewart and my mother owned at the time in Evanston, Illinois. And I was maybe about 11 or 12. Um, the Jacksons, the miniseries in itself was kind of still in pre-production. They were still like trying to get big name attachments like Angela Bassett and Lawrence Hilton Jacobs and Billy D. Williams. And so they were, building up the cast to um I guess make the film really, really attractive, to viewers when you have big names like that. And so by the time they started casting for Michael number two, which was technically my role in there because it was three Michaels, so I was Michael number two. And by the time they started casting for that, it was like an international casting call, man. They were auditioning kids all over the United States, and then in some cases, across the pond. I think even Wade Robeson, he had auditioned for it. He's originally from Australia. There were kids, from Europe. I'm sure kids from Asia, but it was a pretty big deal, the auditioning process for that.
I heard that Michael Jackson, he actually chose you, right?
Yeah, Michael had to personally pick the actors who portrayed him in the miniseries. So I was honored. I went through the whole process of I guess advancing past kids from the international to the national auditions to finally there were a group of kids that were like flown out to Los Angeles, kids from Chicago, kids from New York, whoever else that that they were interested in taking a look at. So we were all flown to Los Angeles to audition in front of the Jackson family, the ABC network, who were the people who were broadcasting the miniseries at the time. And then Michael was on, he wasn't on tour yet in Europe, but he was rehearsing in Europe, preparing for the Dangerous tour. So he wasn't actually present during the audition process. But once we went through kind of like that semifinal round, of auditioning in front of his family and the producers and the casting director and the director. Then the last three finalists, if you will, their tapes were flown out to Michael, and then from there he had to make the decision, ultimately who he wanted to portray him in the film. So I, again, by the grace of God, man, I guess he saw something in me um that he just saw, where I guess he felt that I could step up to the plate and do him justice, as far as portraying him. And so he gave me that opportunity, and it changed my life, man. And I can't thank, whenever I get the opportunity in an interview, I always take the time to thank Michael, for giving me that opportunity. Just a kid from Chicago, man, that he just selected out of all of these amazingly talented kids who had already auditioned. And shout out to the Jackson family, from Jermaine Jackson to Mr. and Mrs. Jackson. The whole family was really involved in the casting process. So I appreciate them as well for believing in me and giving me that opportunity. And shout out to Suzanne DePass as well, who was the executive producer, of that miniseries at the time, but who was also my manager at that time as well. So she put a lot of faith in me and gave me a shot too. So shout out to Suzanne DePass for sure.
Did he ever come to the set?
He came to set one time, um, but it was like really, really brief. And those of us who got the opportunity to meet him briefly, we did, and it was cool. I mean, it was just one of those experiences where I was kind of like in and out because we were on a lunch break, and I think we were kind of behind that day schedule wise because we were filming at Enterprise Studios, on Magnolia Boulevard in Burbank, and we were actually filming the "I'll Be There" segment of the film, where I was in the studio with Barry Gordy, who Billy D. Williams played. And so we had a lot of star power on the set that day, and a lot going on. And so I guess during that time when he was in Los Angeles for whatever business that he was doing at the time, he was able to sneak over and, say hello to a couple of the cast members, and then he kept it moving. So I was honored to meet him, honored to, receive positive feedback from him, and to know that, I truly had his blessing.
I heard you say that he'll be in disguise when he came to the set.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of like Michael's thing back then, because he was such a, I mean, he's such a huge star, man. Like, he would go places and people would fucking pass out. You know what I mean? So he wasn't just like your regular superstar. He was, the biggest star on the planet. So even working professionals in the entertainment industry, if they knew that he was on set, that would have slowed production down. So they had to keep it kind of low.
I heard that Tupac and Janet, they came to the set once.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Two. That's when I first met Pac. I had the pleasure of meeting him twice during the time when he was still here with us. But yeah, him and Janet came down to that same set. That was during the time when they were filming Poetic Justice. Then I guess Janet maybe just wanted to come through and check out production, but she brought Pac with her. And I was a huge Pac fan. Like, man, Tupacalypse Now was one of my favorite albums, back then. So to meet him, and he was hella cool. This is before he became like Tupac. So his persona was just, very humble, very cool. Um, Talked to everybody, that he ran into on set. I shook his hand and just had the opportunity to tell him that I was a fan. So that was dope. And then of course Janet Jackson, like, man, that was Janet. And if anybody remembers Poetic Justice, Janet Jackson, boy, you know what I mean? So it was great to meet her in person as well. She was very nice, very gracious, very complimentary, towards everybody that was there, working on the set. She thanked everyone, who was there working on behalf of that show. So it was cool to interact with a superstar like her that was so humble like that.
Who were some of the other celebrities that came to the set that you remember?
Yeah, yeah. It was crazy, man. There were always like friends of the Jackson family who were coming on to the set, just to show support. And just out of curiosity, because was the talk of the town, the lead up to it, premiering. Everybody was anticipating that miniseries coming out. And mind you, this was prior to social media, the internet, all of that. So when you had that buzz going on in Hollywood, people were kind of clamoring to get a glimpse as to what exactly we were doing over there. So that was dope. Elton John had stopped by, Sir Elton John. That's kind of how I was able to transition into working on The Lion King. The Jackson family was always there, of course, because Jermaine and his wife at the time, Margaret Maldonado, they were always on set. Tito, God rest his soul. I think his sons may have come on set maybe once or twice. 3T, if anybody remembers that group. Of course, Jermaine Jackson Jr. was actually in the film portraying his father. Who else would come on this set? I mean, that whole experience, I'll be honest with you, was just like such a blur because there really wasn't any time to focus on who was around. I really had my blinders on. I was really focused on the job and I was focused on, executing. So even if there were an abundance of celebrities that were coming through, I was completely unaware.
The guy that played the grown Michael Jackson that passed away soon after the movie came out. You have any insight on what happened to him?
Oh, Wylie Draper. Wylie Draper. Oh, Wiley was, man, that was my guy, man. Wiley, originally from Atlanta. Wiley was actually one of the cast members who helped me the most, as far as really locking down Michael's persona and his whole uh, his whole persona even on stage. Wiley and I would work together a lot even after rehearsal because that was one of the things that Michael Peters, God rest his soul as well, that he always challenged us with. He would always say in rehearsals like, "Now I hope y'all know that everybody around the world is gonna be watching y'all, so you better rehearse here and you better get it in." And even those times where you can rehearse on your own, take the time to do it because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be critical of your performances, and if you guys don't come through, the world is definitely going to let you know. So those of us, well, all of us, took that very, very seriously. There wasn't a cast member on that show that didn't take extra hours to rehearse or to prepare, or to lock in even tighter into their roles. So Wiley and I would get together and just go over moves in the mirror, and he'd give me suggestions. And because he was really like on point when it came to Michael, I think prior to him being cast in the miniseries, he was a performer on cruise ships as a Michael impersonator. And so he really, yeah, he really really had it down. But aside from him uh presenting such a beautiful performance in that film, man, he was just an amazing and beautiful person, man. Beautiful spirit, nice to everyone, very humble. I actually went and visited him when he was in the hospital. He was at St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank, and I think this maybe 5 to 6 months after the miniseries had like aired. And then I caught wind that he was sick with leukemia. And so my mother and I, we found out that he was at St. Joseph's in Los Angeles. And so we went over there to visit him. And I got a chance to tell him, thank you and how much I appreciated him and loved him as a friend, and prayed with him. And then unfortunately and sadly, maybe like a month later, he passed. But Wiley was really, really good guy, man. We, all of us who had the pleasure of working with him on that miniseries, we all miss him. We wish, I believe all of us, we wish that he would have gotten the chance to really, receive his flowers fully while he was still here with us.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, man. Him passing away so soon after the movie. Terrible, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a young Terrence Howard in that movie too, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard was on that show, man. Terrence was cool as hell, bro. Yeah, man, he was super cool. I just remember because all of us stayed in this temporary residence apartment complex called the Oakwoods, and we were all in West LA, like off on the corner of Sepulveda and Venice. And everybody had, their own unit. Me and my mother, we stayed in our own unit. And then those of us who weren't actual residents of the city of Los Angeles, that's where we were housed. And I think at that time, I don't know where Terrence was living at that time. He may have been living in New York and had been flown out there. But anyway, his apartment unit was right across from me and my mother's. They were the only thing that separated our units was a swimming pool. And every day after rehearsal or after we would, get through filming, me, him, a couple of the other cast members of the show, and we would all hang by the pool. We swim, we barbecue, we talk about the day, um, what we achieved that day, what we thought of our performances, what we could tighten up on, all of those things we discussed. And Terrence was another one of those guys that was super super focused, on his performance. I knew back then, before he blew up, that Terrence was definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with as an actor. So, I'm glad to see where his career has gone, and such a huge fan of his and all the work that he's done since then. But yeah, he was a great guy.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about that too. Did you see him becoming that big?
Oh yeah, no, you could. I mean, there are performers, there are actors when working with them on set. Even if they're just starting their journey, so to speak, or starting their career, you know the real ones, when they step on set, because they'll really be prepared. They'll have different ways by which they approach the scene, and you could tell just in the takes. He would always give a different kind of thing in the takes where it would show his range, and his versatility and his ability to um to be able to shoot from the hip as an actor. So on top of his preparedness already being intact, his ability to um bring about or implement improv was just as impressive. So yeah, I knew Terrence was going to be one of those guys. I mean, I was just surrounded by extraordinary talent on that show.
How was it like working with Billy D. Williams?
Man, Billy D. Williams was hella cool. Very nice to me, very gracious. Billy D. Williams, legendary performer. I knew him as Lando Calrissian from Star Wars, from Empire Strikes Back. Like, and of course he was in Mahogany, and but he was very gracious and very patient. A lot of adult actors, when dealing with child performers, have a tendency to kind of not be as patient and understanding, and could kind of be a little short, because kids are still going to be kids. You know what I'm saying? Even if you place them in a professional setting. And some adult actors don't know how to deal with that or know how to work with kids like that. But Mr. Billy D. Williams was absolutely fantastic. Very, very cool. Was always giving me little pointers and things like that. And then he, unknowingly or unbeknownst to him at the time, but he was giving me little tricks that I could use, later on as a performer. Because I think at times he had a difficult time kind of retaining the dialogue because there was so much. So being that he couldn't like really memorize a lot of this extensive dialogue that he would have in this scene, he had, we call them sides, and they're basically like the scene, like 3-4 pages of the scene that you're shooting that day. Then he had papers acting like he was signing, a contract or something like that as Barry Gordy, but it would actually be the script. So that's how he would be able to kind of, keep up with the scene and stay in the scene without, um, wearing himself out mentally. So there were a lot of things that I picked up, just a lot of different little, I guess, little tips that as an actor that you can use if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're just trying to be in the moment and not necessarily want to be tied down to the dialogue like that, and just get the action right and the feeling of it, the spirit of the scene. Billy D. Williams definitely showed me how to do that. So shout out to him.
Classic movie, man. Classic. You looking forward to the new one?
Oh, absolutely, man. When I first heard about them casting it, when I heard that it was greenlit and that Antoine Fuqua was going to be directing it, I already knew it was going to be a great film because Antoine Fuqua is a phenomenal director. I mean, from Training Day to what else has Antoine done? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. He's just a high caliber, director. So for them to put him in the driver's seat to help tell that story, I knew we were gonna, as an audience, go on an epic journey, with that film. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I'm very excited to see the gentleman who is also related to Michael, but the gentleman who is portraying Michael. The trailers that I've seen just look they look amazing, man. I'm super excited for that whole cast. Like I'm very happy that they were able to run that back and breathe new life into that story. Because the Jackson family and Michael Jackson's story is a phenomenal story, man. A black family coming out of, Gary, Indiana, and becoming international icons and superstars. And, that doesn't happen every day. So I'm so glad that they've decided to, run that story back and breathe some new life into it so that a new generation of fans who may not know how deep the legacy is of Michael Jackson and his family, and the impact that he had in pop culture and just the world in general. I'm glad that they're running it back for the new generation so that they can learn.
I want to go back to Elton John. You brought him up earlier. Give me the backstory about how he was on set and he wanted you to audition for The Lion King.
Yeah, I got to keep it real with you, man. The process of me leading up to um becoming the singing voice of Simba and the Lion King, like what I told you, I was so focused when I was working on that film, The Jacksons. I just had blinders on. So, I mean, you could have told me anybody was there, and I would have just been like, okay, cool, whatever. And I think that's exactly kind of how it happened. He had come to the set. We were filming the Who's Loving You scene where the Jackson 5 was on tour. They were doing a stadium tour. And we were working at the Santa Monica Civic Center. That was the arena that we were using to kind of, give the effect that we were playing an arena show. And on that particular day, for some odd reason, because every other day that we worked on the show, we would have a playback. So we wouldn't be actually singing on set. There would be a playback going. That way we could kind of conserve our energy, our voices, and we would just, kind of go with the choreography and do the action with that. But that particular day, something had happened with the playback to where we couldn't get Michael's actual voice. So I had to sing it like live right then and there. So I've been doing that all day. And when you're on the stage, you have lights, kind of pointed at you, similar to this, right? So you can't see, I couldn't see the camera, I couldn't see the crew, I couldn't see anybody. It was just the lights, and it was pitch black beyond that. So of course, me being in my zone, I can't see anybody. I'm just kind of doing my thing, keeping it moving. And so it was a break that we had, right? I think close to when we were rapping. And then that's when my mother came over and she was like, Jason, yo, Elton John was just here and, loved your voice and, was really complimenting, your performance. And he even asked somebody in the crew or whoever had escorted him to set, who's that kid? Like, I like to meet his mom, which in turn, he met my mom. And then that's when he told her, he said, man, he has a great voice. I don't know if he would be interested, but I just signed on to write the music for this new film that Disney is doing. And at the time, The Lion King was called King of the Jungle. That was the working title of it. And so he said, I'm working on this film for Disney called King of the Jungle. Would he be interested in auditioning? It wasn't an offer. It was just an opportunity to come in and audition because, again, The Lion King was another one of those projects where you had a lot of kids that were auditioning for it. I don't think they had even cast Jonathan Taylor Thomas yet, but I think they had just about every child performer in Hollywood auditioning for young Simba. So fast forward, I believe the Santa Monica Civic Center performances were like some of the last ones that we shot for the Jacksons. So we shot those, and then we wrapped production on the Jacksons. And then my agent had worked it out, who was Elizabeth Geddes at the time. Shout out to Elizabeth and Ann Geddes. They were my agents here in Chicago. They had negotiated with Disney to where I could do, a voice test. So Disney picked up the tab at the hotel that my mother and I was staying at as we were wrapping the Jacksons. And then I went out to Burbank to, it wasn't Disney Studios, but it was a recording studio that they had. I believe it was like off of Olive. It was definitely in Burbank, but it was down the street from Buena Vista Sound Stages. And I went in there and sang the songs down, maybe once or twice. And I had been given a tape, a cassette tape, prior to that to rehearse. I Just Can't Wait to Be King, Hakuna Matata, and there was one other song that didn't make the final cut of the film called Warthog Rhapsody. And so I learned all of these songs and ultimately went into the studio, sang the songs down, and I think maybe my second or third take was when I was given the official offer, and then they asked me if I wanted to audition for the speaking role, because I think they were still auditioning actors, they were still auditioning talent, but at the same time they were already in negotiations with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. So I think as a backup, in case that negotiation disintegrated for whatever reason, they had a backup. So they were entertaining the thought of me even doing the speaking voice as well. And so I, recited a couple of lines from the script, and they were like, "Oh man, he sounds great. I don't know. We may have to cast him, as the actual voice as well." And then right as we were wrapping up the sessions, the actual singing sessions, business affairs at Disney had informed the producers that they had just closed a deal with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. So he ultimately did the speaking voice of Simba, and I was still blessed to be able to be the singing voice for Simba.
Yeah, that's a real big deal, man. And you still getting paid for that song, right?
Yeah, I mean the residual income from it, which I guess that's what a lot of people know about that story that went viral when I was on Vlad's show, and when I was explaining how my mother, how she negotiated the terms of my deal, and was able to negotiate alongside with my agent, where I was able to receive residual income from it, because back in those days Disney would just kind of do like a flat out fee. And it would be a substantial amount of money. They wouldn't play you cheap, so to speak. But I think Disney back then knew that there was so much money that they generated on the back end, that residuals just weren't like a thing, not unless you were a name, that Disney kind of respected at that time. They were willing to negotiate with those kind of stars. But an up and coming talent and a kid just coming out of Chicago that nobody knew about, that was kind of unheard of. But you know, thank you to my mother, and with her having past experience of working in the music industry, and experiencing some moderate success as a professional recording artist, working with the likes of Aretha Franklin and Curtis Mayfield and the Ohio Players, and then having a long, successful career in the jingle industry here in Chicago. Her understanding and knowing the business, that's how she was able to go in and basically say, well, because a lot of people, when presented with a contract, sometimes people will just take what's initially presented, but you do have the right to negotiate. You do have the right to counter. And so my mother knew that, and she countered. And we went back and forth for maybe about a week or so. And I think eventually they had presented kind of like an ultimatum to us through my agent, which was like, well, hey, these are the terms of the deal that we're offering. You can either take it or leave it. And so my mother sat me down in the kitchen, And she said, well, look, here's where we're at. This is what I think. I don't think that we should take it. I think what we countered with, like, that's what we should go with. But it's your career at the end of the day. It's your decision. You let me know how you wanna run the play. But here are the pros and cons of both scenarios. And when she laid out both scenarios, and then ultimately she said, Jason, with as it relates to the power of negotiation, if somebody really wants you, they'll comply. They'll agree to the terms. And she was like, I think, she was like, I'm taking, a betting chance, and an educated guess in risk. I think they really want you for this. So I think that we should go back and say, well, we'll pass if you guys aren't if you guys aren't willing to meet us halfway with these terms that we've put forth. And business affairs and legal called back and said, we'll do it. We'll have the we'll have the final draft over to you guys, and you send it, and it worked out, and I'm so grateful to Disney, for willing to work with us like that, because it really has been a blessing to myself and my whole family. That residual income that I receive from that film from time to time, it really does help out my family a great deal in at different times. So I'm so appreciative, and I don't take that blessing for granted. So
Yeah, that was pretty bold of your mom to turn down that flat fee. It ended up working out, but that was still pretty bold, man.
yeah, man. Well, again, and this is a credit to my mother. She came up in a time during the recording industry and the jingle business where, especially when it came to black performers, excuse my French, we would always get the shit end of the stick because we didn't understand the power of negotiation. We didn't know how to leverage, whatever we had going on at that time to get the best deals possible. Everybody was, just scrambling for an opportunity to be seen and heard and make a little bit of money, at least to where they could get up out of the current circumstances that they were dealing with. So a lot of our people coming from humble beginnings. Back then you would see so many classic artists that got taken advantage of, and so my mother was able to see that throughout the years. And the way that she was able to even handle her career, she knew that there was a better way. She knew that, if you ask, you shall receive. If you give a little bit of pushback, and if they really really want you, it's all business at the end of the day. They'll come through, and they'll honor whatever it is that you're presenting, as a counter. And then if they're not willing to honor that and work with you and meet you in the middle, and then that's probably a project you didn't need to be involved with in the first place, because they never really respected you like that. You know what I'm saying? People in companies and corporations that respect you, they're going to compensate you the way that you deserve to be compensated. And you get what you negotiate. So thankfully, the Lord placed me in a position where, he had a mother he blessed me with a mother who was no nonsense, who knew the business and who acted accordingly. And so we were able to, really benefit from that as a family.
Looking at the Lion King now, did you ever think it would be so iconic?
I got to be honest with you, man. I did not think, I knew the Lion King was going to be popular, but I didn't know it was going to, kind of surpass even their classic animated features that had come out prior to it. So you had Beauty and the Beast that had come out, you had Aladdin, you had Little Mermaid. There was already a track record of major global success that Disney had already had with these films. And I knew that the Lion King was interesting. I thought the story was great. I thought, having it set in Africa and based around Simba and the pride and all of that, I thought that was beautiful. But I honestly didn't know how it was going to be received. To keep it real with you, after I wrapped on working on the Lion King, Disney, before they put us on the plane to come back here to Chicago, Disney had given us like a little care package of Disney gifts. They had already had Lion King merch ready to go, surprisingly enough. So they had blessed me with a Lion King crew neck sweater, a stuffed animal, and I think like a coffee cup or something like that. So I come back here to Chicago, come back to school. I'm super proud, of working on this film. So I wear my Lion King crew neck sweater, and I'm in the neighborhood with my people, and this is before anybody knew anything about a Lion King, because we had recorded the songs. Then I think even some of the voices for the speaking voices have been recorded maybe 2 or 3 years prior to any animation, being done. So um nobody knew that this film was like coming out. And so I wore this sweater to school, and man, I got roasted. Everybody's like, man, fuck is a Lion King, bro? Like, man, don't coming over here with that goofy shit. Like, it was that kind of playful banter. Nobody was, trying to be mean or mean spirited in any kind of way. It was just kids, just teasing. But I remember I took my crew neck off. 13 years old, impressionable. You want to be liked, you want to be popular. And so I took my crew neck off because I was a little bit embarrassed because everybody been kind of roasting me that whole day. And fast forward, maybe 2 years later, me and a couple of my friends, because we would always ride our bikes to the River Oaks Mall in our neighborhood, which is like in the south suburbs of Chicago. Shout out to Calumet City, Dalton, South Holland, Harvey, Markham. What's up to everybody out there? Um, and me and my friends, we would go to the River Oaks Mall, and there was a theater there called the River Oaks 9 and 10 Theater. It was the biggest theater in our neighborhood where all of the major films would first be screened, right? So my friends and I, we go to the River Oaks 9 and 10 Theater to go check a regular film. We sitting in the theater, and then all of a sudden, this trailer starts. And you seeing like animals in the Serengeti, and you seeing wildebeest, and all the stuff in the circle of life. That whole trailer. So I'm looking, and I'm like, hold up. Okay, it's got a lion and looks like Africa, and I was like, this can't be Disney. And mind you, the first trailers that came out for The Lion King, it was just that scene of the circle of life. And everybody now knows the circle of life and how beautiful and how epic that song is. So imagine sitting in a theater, at 14 years old, unbeknownst to you, you're about to see this beautiful, film or trailer of a film being presented. And at the end of the song for Circle of Life, then it just comes in with the font for The Lion King, the title, The Lion King, and then it goes black. And so my friends, I'm there in shock, looking at the screen. And my boy Alfred, my childhood best friend, he turns to me, he goes, "Hey man, is that the shit that you wore the sweater? Remember when we was roasting your ass?" I was like, that's it. He was like, "Oh my God, man, that's gonna be huge." And then from there, it just kind of took off, and everybody was so proud of it. My neighborhood and my people and my upbringing, in South Holland, Illinois, and all of my friends there and my family, I received nothing but support, and they were proud when the Jacksons, came out, but they were even more proud when the Lion King came out and ended up being as successful as it was. So that was beautiful to be able to, experience that kind of success at that young age while still being here at home with my people. So that was dope.
To be honest with you, as I think about it, yeah, I Can't Wait to Be King might be the most popular part of The Lion King.
Man, I appreciate. I mean, between I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Mufasa dying, that's one of the main things that people kind of point out with the film. And I was able to really kind of see and experience that for myself because I performed at the Hollywood Bowl, the 30th anniversary of The Lion King, with Nate and Ernie.
That's when y'all did that play, right?
Yeah, and I performed with Northwest, and North did I Just Can't Wait to Be King. And that was the first time I ever got a chance to perform that song with Nate and Ernie. So it was really really dope to be able to have that moment, to see the reaction of the crowd, to see people singing along, and to see the generations that were impacted by it, from whether it was grown adults to, them bringing their children and them just now learning about the Lion King, just to be a part of that and experience that. Man, I'm so grateful to God that he gave me that opportunity to be a part of something like that. That's something that I even enjoy with my family and my children. So I'm just so grateful for that, and grateful to everybody out there for the kind words that they share with me whenever I'm walking down the street, or people bump into me. They always express kind words regarding the Lion King. So I'm definitely grateful and appreciative for that opportunity.
Yeah, man. Classic show, man. One of my favorites. Nobody never asked you about Thea. I know it only lasted like one season, right?
Yeah, with H Town's own Thea Vidal. I was in Thea on ABC. Um, Unfortunately, we only did one season, but great show. Castle Rock Entertainment. Rest in peace to Rob Reiner. Castle Rock Entertainment was behind it. They produced it. Him and his partner Glenn Patnick, Bernie Kukoff, who was one of the producers and who was also one of the head writers and the producers for the Cosby Show. Andrew Suskind, Jay Sandridge, all of these guys were really big TV guys back then. So yeah, I worked with Thea Vidal on that. I had the honor and the pleasure working with Brandy Norwood before she became Brandy. Who else was on that show, man? Adam Jeffries. It was so many talented people in that show, and I wish that we would have been able to go on, because I really feel to this day um that Thea definitely had legs. I mean, you could kind of see it now. There's a show out on BET. I think it's called Miss Pat, and I love that show. And Miss Pat show is kind of like that. Are you familiar with that show on BET?
Never seen an episode, but I heard about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like the same premise almost, but judging the popularity nowadays that show has, in comparison to the popularity and support that we had with Thea back in the day, it was kind of like the same thing. And the Miss Pat show, I think, has been running on BET for the past 4 seasons. So um, yeah, it just things happen. Network television back then, in the times, really really different. And you just had to get in where you fit in. But it was a great experience being able to work on that show.
Yeah, it ended after one season, man. And it was a good show, yo. Like, why did it end so soon?
Uh, okay, so let me say this respectfully, and let me say this very carefully. There were things that were happening behind the scenes that I think played a lot into the cancellation of the show. Cause Thea, the show was a top rated show. We were a top 10 show in the Nielsen's ratings every week. We were in a very strong time slot on a Wednesday, like 8:30. We came on after Grace Under Fire. Back then, that was prime time TV schedule. If you were able to be on television on a Wednesday and Thursday, 9 times out of 10, you were probably one of the more highly rated shows of the week, back then when the Nielsen ratings and all of that counted. But there were things that were happening behind the scenes that I won't get into out of respect for, the people that were involved. But things just happened that I think made it problematic, and probably where the network could see and where the executives can see that over time, and maybe with the more success that we had, that it could become an issue later on. So I think they just kind of decided to cut their losses, right there in the first season, and keep it moving. It was such an abrupt um it was such an abrupt move that they made with canceling it. Like, I don't even think we got a chance to film the last episode. We were guaranteed for 21 shows, and we ended that show on the 20th show. We didn't even get to finish the 21st show. It was just like real abrupt, you know, wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of, exit. But um that's how it was back in the day. It's a business, so it is what it is.
Yeah, it was a solid show. It definitely should have lasted longer, man. It definitely. But I remember some years ago, Thea, she came out with a comment about how she felt disrespected by Brandy and her mom.
Yeah, she yeah, it was a lot going on, and and again, I'll say to that, just out of respect to everybody who was involved with that. So much could have been avoided. Um, and it was just unfortunate how that all kind of dissolved and dismantled. But shout out to Thea. Um, from my personal experience, it was a pleasure to work with her. I know her and Brandy had their issues with one another, but um, I was never in direct line of that. I know Brandy went through a lot with that, and just, as a friend and as young performers back then, we just tried to rally together, to support her. But it was difficult for her. And, this is probably, well, not probably, it was prior to I Want to Be Down coming out and her becoming an international, music star. So when when she finally did ascend to greater heights after Thea, I was very, very happy for her and very proud of her, because I was aware of, the things that she had experienced on that show.
Let me ask you this: in real time, did you know about the friction between Brandy and Thea?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was, no, it was very obvious on the set. Like the tension was palpable. Like it no, it was it was really, really unfortunate. Well, what I will say though is again, as far as my experience, I was never in any kind of direct line of fire with that, because my mom wasn't playing that shit. You know what I'm saying? And everybody knew that. And Sonia wasn't either. I don't know what the circumstances were that really made it for the perfect storm for that kind of tension and negativity to exist between the two of them. I don't know what kind of kicked it off, but when it kicked off, it affected everyone. It ultimately affected the show. And it's unfortunate because Thea could have went on to be, one of those shows that goes into syndication, does 100 episodes that, you see on Nick at Night, or, one of those shows. It really had the potential, and we had the firepower, cast wise, talent wise, and we had the firepower behind the camera, because we had legendary producers and writers and directors that were putting the show together each week. So, all of the pieces were there, but, you know, things happen. Um, you go through it and you keep it moving. But I'm glad at the end of the day that everybody eventually, transitioned over into where they needed to be and are still walking in their purpose and still experiencing their own success in their own right. And, everybody's healthy and happy from what I know and alive. So, hey, it's the past. Shit happens, and that's the game, and you keep it moving.
Yeah, I heard that you and Brandy, y'all would go to the Martin set.
Yeah. Yeah. We would, cause we were, Brandy and I, the show was on the Universal lot in Universal City, California. And we were on a sound stage right down the road from the Martin set. And so on our lunch breaks, me and Brandy, because Martin was a hugely popular show back then. So Brandy and I would walk to their sound stage and we would watch them rehearse. So we would sit in the stands where the studio audience usually would be, and we would watch Martin and the whole cast, Tisha and Tashina and Carl and Tommy. Like, we would watch them all, kind of rehearse and put their show together. And then we would kind of go back because we would be inspired. Because even during those rehearsals and camera blocking, man, Martin would be doing so much classic stuff. There's so much stuff that we saw in those rehearsals that never made it to TV. But man, when I tell you, that whole crew on set would be rolling from some of the antics and, improvisational stuff that he would do. And we would be right in the audience catching all of that. So that served as inspiration, to me and Brandy. So we would go back to Thea, to our show, and we try to bring kind of like the same energy. So it was cool. It was cool to see those working adult professionals, who we could relate to, performing at a high level, and who ultimately inspired us. So we would do that, and then we would also we would take this little escalator, excuse me, from the back lot of Universal. We would take the escalator up to the theme park, and we would ride the Back to the Future ride on our lunch break. And they would just let us go over and over and over again until we just got tired of it. And then we get back on the escalator and go back to work. And It was awesome working on Thea, working on the Universal lot. That's an experience I'll never forget because as a kid, when you would maybe go on vacation and you go to Universal and go on the back lot tour and you see the tram and all of that and you'd be in the tram looking at all of these working professionals and people in Hollywood doing their thing. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be one of those people that when the tram would pass by, I would be waving at them and they'd be taking pictures of me from the tram. So to have that experience, that was cool. And then Amblin Entertainment, Steven Spielberg's company, was right behind our sound stage. So his executives would be gracious enough. Adam Jeffries was the one who actually opened up that door for us because Adam at that time was an aspiring film director. And so he had established some kind of good rapport with the people at Amblin Entertainment. And so on our lunch breaks then, they would let us come back and take a tour of Amblin Entertainment. And you see where, they had made E.T. and where Mr. Spielberg's office was and all of that stuff. So that was really cool, man. I loved working on that show. I wish we could have that we could have lasted a few more seasons because that experience in itself was just it was dope.
Yeah, I never knew until now when I started interviewing more actors that, a lot of them shows be shot on the same light.
Oh yeah, back then, I mean, it's a little bit different now, because you don't, the sitcom format of television isn't really a popular format anymore. The multicam sitcom, nowadays the more popular shows that people are really into, whether it be comedy or drama, are single cam, and most of those are filmed on location or on a sound stage that doesn't require a studio audience. But back then, when you had the Steve Harvey show and Thea and In the House and the Wayans brothers and all of those were sitcoms, if you will, and they were all performed in front of live studio audiences. So everybody would be, on the back lot and you would just visit one another, especially if you were black. You know what I mean? Because there was only so many of us who had shows or, who were working like that. So we all just had a way of kind of just being a community all unto ourselves and supporting one another. So, even when I worked at Sunset Gower, when we did the pilot for a Smart Guy, I remember Moesha was across the alleyway from us. In the House was across the alleyway. And it was like one more other shot. And I think the Wayans were on the same lot. And so we would just like, we would all fellowship and we would all visit each other's sets and, talk to one another and encourage one another and, just iron sharpens iron, that kind of that kind of community. So Hollywood back then, especially with Black Hollywood, it was a very close knit, tight community, and we all got along, and it was beautiful to be able to experience that, especially as a young kid, to be able to see that working professionals and people working on a high level and and kicking open doors, for the next generation, a black performance to come through. I was able to like really see all of that firsthand, to see the Wayans family really empower so many people in Hollywood. That was awesome.
Damn, that's some legendary shows, man.
Yeah, yeah, man. That was a great time to be in that era of television production. It was yeah, it was special. It really was special, and I'm glad that I was able to be a part of that. And so many of those people that watched those shows, kind of grew up alongside with me. We all kind of grew up together. The audience and myself, like throughout the course of time, especially in those adolescent years when I was really on sitcom TV like that. Like my audience grew with me and I grew with them. And so even now, as adults with our own kids now, and I get people my own age and from my own generation that approach me on the street with their families, and they'll go, I'm telling my son, man, we used to watch you, every week on Blase Blase. And, I just started showing him Smart Guy, or I just turned him on to Thea or The Lion King. So to be able to have that kind of exchange now with my fan base and with my supporters, it's beautiful. I love it. I love it.
Y'all had so many TV shows shot on y'all lot. Was Family Matters one of them?
No, Family Matters wasn't on our lot. Where was Family Matters? Ooh, I couldn't even tell. I think maybe Family Matters. Family Matters was at maybe CBS Radford Studios or something like that. Um, but I know the two main lots that I've worked at, or three, I should say, out of my career, have always been Sunset Gower, the Universal lot, and the Disney lot. Especially when we did Smart Guy, I worked on the Disney lot for like 4 years, and that was dope. I loved working on Disney lot.
Yeah, that show didn't age well. I used to like it as a kid, but I seen it lately. Terrible show, man.
Which show? Which show?
Family Matters.
You don't think so?
Yeah, that show terrible, man. Trash, man.
Really? You think so?
I'm keeping it real, yo.
Hey man, well you know what man? Everybody has a difference of opinion when it comes to these certain shows. I think I look so favorably upon Family Matters because I really respected how Jaleel came in there and like and like took over because the show was doing good already. It had a consistent, fan base that it tuned in. They still came on Friday. But when Jaleel came on as Urkel, man, I mean, to see his rise, his ascension, as another child performer, as a peer and as a colleague, man, I was just so impressed by how a young performer like him was able to, carry a show like that. And he really did. Everybody else was on the show too. Shout out to Darius McCrary, everybody who was on that show. They were all phenomenal actors. But Jaleel came in with that star power and took that show to greater heights to where that whole Friday night lineup on ABC, that TGIF Friday lineup, Jaleel was the captain of that ship. So salute to Jaleel White. I mean that dude was on fire. He had the Urkel doll, the Urkelos. He had the cereal. I mean, he was on fire. You know what I mean? So back then, when you caught that kind of wave, I mean, you were just that just put you on another level because again, there wasn't the internet. The internet wasn't out there like that. Content wasn't on a phone back then. So it's like when you were on television, that was a big deal. And then for you to be, the energy or the creative talent that's powering that show, that's keeping that show going, oh man, he was the toast of Hollywood.
Did you know Michelle Thomas?
Yeah, Michelle was on that show as well. I yes, I knew Michelle. I forgot what show she and I worked on together. It may have been Thea. Yeah, I believe she may have done an episode of Thea or maybe an episode of Smart Guy. But yeah, I knew Michelle before she got sick. Of course, we were all surprised by her untimely passing. With transitioning over from cancer. Uh, but yeah, I remember Michelle. Michelle was very, very nice. Absolutely.
But yeah, that was just a random thought, man. She came to mind when we was talking about Family Matters. So
But we all, I mean, to kind of play into your random thought, I mean, we all knew each other. Like I said, we were all a very, close knit tight community, especially um, the black talent that was in Hollywood during that time. And then if you were a kid, on top of that too, it was 2 degrees of separation from everybody. You know what I mean? We were all very close knit.
Smart Guy. How did that show come about? You get in the role in that.
Smart Guy came about. I was uh I was actually living in New York at the time. I was a signed recording artist to Motown Records, and I was living in New York during Andre Harrell's tenure there at Motown as the CEO. God rest Andre Harrell. I was originally signed to Motown through Gerald Busby. I got my deal at Motown after I did the Jacksons miniseries. And Gerald Busby, God rest his soul, he's another one who's passed on. But Gerald Busby and Steve McKeever gave me a deal or offered me a deal at Motown Records. I released one album on Motown called Love Ambition that experienced some moderate success. It's actually the single Love Ambition in itself is like a big deal here in Chicago. It's known as a steppers classic. We do a form of dance here, couples dance called stepping, and that's when people, that's when the OGs and their beautiful ladies come out, well dressed, ready for a nice evening of dancing and dinner and drinks, and they do the couples dancing, and it's all very beautiful. It's all a part of Chicago culture, Chicago black culture on top of that. But my song, Love Ambition, um, is known as a classic here that people dance to. And so I had that success with that song. And then Gerald Busby and Steve McKeever transitioned out of Motown. And Andre Harrell was appointed as the CEO of Motown through the late, great Clarence Avant. And I was brought on. They kept me as an artist there. So Andre had temporarily moved myself and my cousin Kevin, who was serving as my guardian at the time. He moved us to New York. And so I was there recording my second LP for Motown. I put out a single called Stay With Me. And the record was doing pretty well. It definitely had some momentum on the East Coast. But I was becoming increasingly frustrated as an artist up there because I really didn't feel, and this is no diss to Andre Harrell or any of the people up there that I work with on Motown, because I had an amazing experience of working with all of them, during that time. But as a young artist, I was just becoming increasingly frustrated with feeling like nobody really understood me or got me up there as an artist. And so I was kind of just like lying dormant in New York at Motown. And then I got a call from my agent, from Elizabeth Geddes. And she said, hey, uh, the WB network. She didn't even say Disney. She's like, the WB network has this new show called Smart Guy that's starring Tia and Tamara's little brother, Taj. And they want you to audition. But they want you to come to Los Angeles and audition. And I was already, on the East Coast. I was actually in the middle of recording more songs for the album. So initially I was like, oh no, I can't make it out to LA. I didn't feel like taking a 6 hour flight going there and another 6 hour flight coming back to New York. But I did present to my agent. I was like, well, if they would let me self tape, I'll put myself on tape here in New York. We'll send the tape out to them, and if they're interested, then we can go from there. Because I knew what the process was as it relates to getting casted in a show. You have to go through the casting director, then you get the producer's call back, and the producers like you, then you do the network audition, and then the network then has to decide whether they want to book you or not. So I knew that there was that whole protocol that I had to go through, and I didn't want to go through all of that. So I put a self tape down, sent the tape out, and they called back maybe like 3 days later. And they're like, hey, we want to fly him out for producers' callbacks. And so they did. So I flew out, did the producer callback. They kept me in Los Angeles for an additional 2 days so that I could audition in front of the network, in front of the WB executives, and in front of the Disney executives. And that's when they did like pairings where they were trying to figure out, if you and some of the other cast members had chemistry with one another. So I think I maybe had read with Taj once, and I think I maybe read with John Marshall Jones, who played our dad Floyd. I think I may have read with him once. And it was like, I think after that producer session was when I finally, got the offer to come and work on Smart Guy. And so I went back to New York and tried to hold out for a little bit longer with working with Motown, but then became increasingly more and more frustrated. And then that's when I asked to be released so that I could, ultimately go out to Los Angeles and work on Smart Guy uninterrupted. Cause that was my thing too. I didn't want to go to Los Angeles and work on that show and deal with that shooting schedule. And then I'm still contractually tied to Motown Records, where I'm having to fly out every weekend to do a show to gain traction on a record that Motown really wasn't getting behind anyhow. So I asked for a release, and by the grace of God and through Mr. Avant's, generosity, I was able to get released from my contract, and then I was working full time on Smart Guy and never looked back, and was out there in Los Angeles for what, 3 or 4 years working on that show.
I know it had to be fun on that set, huh?
Oh, a Smart Guy. Oh man, we had a ball. We had a ball. Me and Omar, me and OG had, man, we had such a great time working on that show because me and Omar have known each other since we were little kids. I think the first time I met Omar was like when I was 9 years old, um, for a Save the Planet kids thing. It was like they brought all these kid performers together to kind of do a We Are the World kind of thing. Um, I think for some initiative for like global warming or green energy or something at that time, whatever. But that's when I first met Omar, and he was still working on Wild and Crazy Kids. And then he ultimately transitioned over to hanging with Mr. Cooper. And so, just Hollywood kids, all of us being in the mix, you run into each other from time to time. But he and I never had an opportunity to actually work together. So when Smart Guy came about, he was cast as a guest cast member. And I think originally the character of Mo was only in the show for maybe like 1 or 2 shows. But Omar just came in and killed it. Like the first table read that he ever did with us, he got so many laughs at the table read that I think right then and there, they told him, like, hey, we're going to be writing more stuff for you. And then Danny Kalis, who was the executive producer and the creator of the show, co-creator of the show, he had pulled me to the side and he said, you and Omar have such great chemistry. We're going to figure out this 1-2 punch between Marcus and Mo. And so that's when they started writing, more stuff for me and him. And of course, incorporating us more into Taj's storyline, because of course he's the number one, he's the captain of the ship. But they were finding more cool ways by which to bring our characters into his world. So yeah, it was dope, man. Working with Taj, to see him performing at such a high level as a super young, working professional, that was dope. Working with Essence Atkins, an amazing actress, but even more than that, just an amazing human being with a beautiful spirit. And then working with John Marshall Jones, my guy JJ. JJ was my guy. JJ actually uh, taught me how to smoke my first cigar. And I was like 18 years old. 18, 19 years old. And JJ was, behind the scenes was teaching me a lot of gentleman etiquette. How to pair the right drink with the cigar, and how to move out like, in the world like a gentleman in Hollywood. JJ showed me a lot of that, man. So I walked away from Smart Guy with a lot of just amazing experiences and memories. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I heard y'all had a lot of creative control when it came to Smart Guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had enough creative control, as it relates to Disney, because Disney is very, very hands on. They're very, very particular about their brand and what they present on their brand, so, which is totally understood. But Omar and I, the two black kids, man, like, and we were like, yo, like, we don't want the show to be corny. Like, we know it's a Disney show, but like, we knew our peers were watching us. We knew our community was watching us. And, there were young black boys and young black men who were looking to us as like, the flavor barometer, if you will. Like, and that was based on what sneakers we were wearing on the show that day, how our hair was styled, how we wore our clothes. Like, we really took pride in representing that golden age generation of hip hop. This was during the time of, Bad Boy, Death Row, Rockefeller, you know what I mean? So that was a golden age in hip hop that me and Omar were a part of, that we were living, every day. And we wanted to, we knew that we were acting and portraying characters, but we also wanted to be our true, authentic selves as young black men during that time. And to his credit, Danny Kalis, especially our executive producer and creator of the show, the one thing that he would do before we would tape, because we would always have wardrobe fittings, whatever we were going to wear on the show that day. So when we would do our wardrobe fittings, in the wardrobe department would take the pictures, the reference pictures, and they say, well, Jason wants to wear this week. And it maybe be like some Allen Iversons or something. And Disney was they were real sticklers about like labels, because they didn't want companies to get like free advertising, you know what I mean, unless they paid them. There was no such thing as like product placement as far as Disney was concerned on their shows, you feel me? So they were very, very particular about it, and would kind of like give a little bit of pushback, but Danny would always fight on our behalf. He would tell him, he'd be like, look, man, these kids want to look cool. These characters are supposed to be cool. We're drawing in the audience that we're drawing in because these kids, not only do they love Taj, but these kids are tuning in because they want to see what Marcus and Mo are going to be rocking that week, and what new slang term they're going to be using that week. So we were given as much freedom, I guess, as you could get for being Disney kids. But yeah, I think we were able to find a happy medium between what Disney wanted and what we wanted and how we wanted to represent ourselves. So, kudos to them for being able to recognize the importance of that during that time. Because again, there were only so many of us that were on television. There's only a handful of us that were being represented on television at that time. So to be able to present our true and authentic selves, I was honored to be able to do that, and I'm so glad that it had the impact that it ultimately did. Because I still have grown adults who grew up with us during that time and were like, yo, man, like, I love the way I used to dress on the show, and man, I saw those Jordans on your show. That's what made me get them. Where I saw this sweater on y'all show, and that's what made me get it. So to know that, I think that's really, really cool.
I was about to ask you about that too, because I remember you making a comment about how if you wanted to wear Jordans, you had to get permission.
Oh yeah, you definitely had to get permission from the higher ups when you were wearing any kind of apparel that was recognizable, or that could be easily related to a brand. And back then, Nike and all these other clothing brands, they had entertainment departments. So they would invite you to come to, their little field office and pick out stuff, to wear. And when you would pick out stuff, they would hope that you would wear it on the red carpet, or that you would wear it at an event where somebody would, catch you on the step and repeat carpet, and and then it would be in People magazine or whatever magazine was hot at that time, or Right On magazine or whatever. But we were, like, me and Omar, we were trying to do it like how the Wayans would do it. Like the Wayans, Marlon and Sean, they was rocking they shit on the Wayans Brothers show. So we wanted to do the same thing. So it was like, if Marlon was wearing Mecca that week, I was gonna wear a Nietzsche, or or Echo or something like that on the show. But we would have to advocate on our behalf for that. But when we would explain it to Disney, like, nah, man, this has to do with culture. Y'all want this show to be cool? You want black kids to like this show? Or you just want kids, period, who are into hip hop and the whole lifestyle into this show? Well, man, let us be us. We not gonna make y'all look stupid. Like, we not just gonna come on here wearing anything. We know what's gonna work and what's gonna pop. And again, so we were able to find that happy medium between those two parties, and we made it happen. It was real cool.
Good show, man. Real good show. Why did it end so soon? I always felt like that show should have lasted longer.
Yeah, man, we were actually, kind of surprised too when we got the notification that we were being canceled. But because I think we were on for maybe like 3 or 4 seasons. But looking back in retrospect and understanding the business of television the way that I know it now, you could see where the WB network was transitioning out of the programming that help them really kickstart and garner their popularity. So it was like the Wayans, our show, the Jamie Foxx show, and maybe like one other show. We were the ones that were kind of bringing the young audience to the WB, the young, cool, hip audience. And then when the WB started seeing that their viewership was growing, that their audience was growing, that the demographic that was tuning into them was becoming more diverse and more mainstream, if you will, then shows like us were easily transitioned out and new shows were brought in, like your Dawson's Creek and your Seventh Heavens and, those kind of shows that played more towards the demographic that they were ultimately trying to lock in, which was more of the mainstream audience, if you will. But all of that being said, I'm still grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful that the WB at that time was able to recognize that those kinds of shows that were powered by the culture and Black creativity and the Black experience. I'm glad that at that time they were able to recognize the beauty and the importance of that and the power of that. And we were given an opportunity to contribute in our own way. And then, once we served our time or served our tenure, then it was time to move on. And again, that's no fault of the WB or Disney. That's the nature of the business. When the business model needs to be updated, when a shift needs to happen in order to, generate more viewers, and what's best for the bottom line and what the shareholders and what the board ultimately wants, then you have to make decisions according to that. So that's ultimately what happened, I think, with Smart Guy. But it's still one of those shows, very memorable. People still look back on it fondly. I get nothing but compliments about it. So hey, for however long that it was on, cool. I'm glad people enjoyed it, and I'm glad we were able to contribute and we were welcomed into people's homes for as long as we were.
What I'll say about the show is this. I mean, y'all all still look great. I mean, you, Omar, Taj. I mean, they should bring the show back, man.
Yeah, I mean, man, to be honest with you, I'm interested in doing it. I would love to do that because I do believe that there's still life left in the show, and I believe it would be even more impactful now, culturally, in just period, for what that show represents and how it can really stand out now. If they can bring back the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, they can definitely bring us back. I don't know if it would necessarily be in the same format as like multicam situation comedy format, maybe single cam, maybe, but um I've heard a couple ideas, tossed around regarding ideas for a spinoff of, I even heard one great idea. There was a young lady who tagged me on Instagram, young Black woman, came up with a great idea as far as my daughter being a child prodigy. And, and I was a, somewhat successful music producer, but um, struggling to not identify with my daughter, but guiding her because, she's like my little brother. She's a genius. And although, my little brother was a genius, I wasn't. And so I kind of need his help and his guidance to kind of steer her in the right direction. So she'll have somebody to relate to. So I've heard ideas like that, which I think are great. If I got the call tomorrow that Disney would want to do it, I would definitely jump at it because all of those people that I had the pleasure and the honor of working with on that show, I love them all. Me and OG, we still keep in contact. There have been times where I've been able to keep in contact, with Essence sparingly. We may see each other out or, somebody may randomly, reconnect us in some kind of way. Taj, same thing. Um, we'll see each other on social media. We may comment on each other's pics or posts or whatever. And, and then before we know, we're DMing about something. And the same thing with John Marshall Jones. So we were all a very, close knit type family. Everybody got along well. Everybody was very respectful towards one another. And yeah, I think that we can do it again. I think there's an audience for it, but that's ultimately up to Disney because they own the IP, they own the intellectual property.
I know at one point your acting career became stagnant to the point where you had to become a chef, right?
Yeah, no, no, I actually am a classically trained chef. I graduated Yeah, I graduated from the Cordon Bleu right there in Hollywood on the corner of Sunset and Vine. I was actually in the same class, but not the same time period as Khalees. Khalees went to culinary school as well, and she's a classically trained chef, and she trained at Le Cordon Bleu in Hollywood. But there were three different classes. There was a morning class, an afternoon class, and an evening class. And I usually took the evening class because I was auditioning um, throughout the day trying to find a job. But to your point, though, to your initial question, yeah, a lot of people don't understand that about our business, or don't understand that about entertainers, and particularly talent in Hollywood. Um, you have your peaks in your valleys. It's not always up. There's this misconception that when you get on television, it's just up from there, and then you're just a multimillionaire, and it's just Bentleys and diamond necklaces, and nights at Spago and Mastros, and it's not like that for a lot of us. Of course, you have your breakout stars, um, that rise into the stratosphere and just go out of space, and then they're just gone. But then there are some of us who are considered to be working actors who have careers. This is our career. And when you have a career in this business, you definitely experience peaks and valleys. And in one particular, period of my life and my career, specifically in what 2007, 2008, '09, during the Great Recession, um, not only was there a recession nationally, but we had also gone on strike. Both unions, I think, at that time, the Writers Guild as well as SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, had gone on strike. So when we go on strike, that pretty much means you can't audition for roles, you can't work on any role, anything that the union is not sanctioned or blessed. You can't work on anything. So that, coupled with then the recession, studios wanting to invest more or roll the dice more on established talent and on established um, content or shows that they felt would work in the marketplace, the opportunities were far and in between. Hell yeah. Especially, not to always kind of harken it back to that, but it's real, especially when it comes to black talent and black actors. Studios weren't really um enthusiastic about investing in those kind of projects. I mean, you could sit with an executive back then, especially if you were trying to pitch a feature film, and if you were a black director with a script that maybe had a predominantly black cast, an executive would easily tell you that they're not going to green light that project because they're like, yeah, it may do well domestically with receipts domestically, but black movies and black talent don't perform well in the foreign market. This is prior to Sinners. This is prior to, all of that. But those were the kinds of obstacles that we would run into from time to time. So whenever a show that you could potentially get cast in, would go out on the breakdowns for you to audition for, man, everybody and their mama would be auditioning for the role. The competition was really, really fierce. And so they can only select one person for that role. And if you weren't fortunate enough to be that person that they chose, then you were back out there auditioning like everybody else. And so, yeah, I went through that for a period of time, for maybe a period of like 2 years. And it got to the point where, I was just down on myself. People who aren't creatives may not be able to relate to this, but as a creative person, my ability to create and to perform and to connect with people, um, in that way is what keeps me alive. That's what wakes me up in the morning, is knowing that I'm going to get an opportunity to connect with people through the talent that the Lord blessed me with. And when those opportunities aren't coming as easily as you think that they should or that they can, you slowly just feel like you're dying inside because you're not able to express yourself creatively like that. And so I needed a creative outlet. I needed something that allowed me to connect with people, and something that I did that came natural to me, and something that I just thoroughly enjoyed. And cooking was one of those things. I was living with an ex-girlfriend at the time. We were staying together across the street from the culinary school, and she was the one who actually suggested that I walk across the street to go to the orientation to see what it was about, because I was, feeling a little bit depressed and down, and it just seemed like the world was kind of passing me by, and then dealing with Los Angeles and the cost of living out there. It was really like, I was having a moment. But thanks to her suggestion, I did walk across the street to Le Cordon Bleu and did the orientation, and fell in love with that whole process of cooking, the mise en place, and the knife cuts, and and the measurements, and the making sauces from scratch, the mother sauces, and the learning how to saute, learning how to roast, learning how to grill, learning how to fabricate or butcher out an animal and how to break it down. Like, I learned all of that, baking and confections and all of that stuff. So Le Cordon Bleu gave me an opportunity to not only learn a new craft or a new trade. God forbid if I wasn't able to continue to work in the realm that I was already comfortable in. Le Cordon Bleu had taught me how to be able to still put food on the table for me and my family. Because even at that time, I was still a father, regardless of whatever. My son was what, 8 years old at that time. And a son or your child, when they're hungry, they can't hear, well, man, I almost got that audition. I almost booked it. The roof still has to be over their head. Food still has to be on the table. You still have to provide a stable environment for a child. So you got to, in those times, when you're dealing with that as a creative person in this industry, if you got to put your ego to the side and get up off your ass and figure something out and get a job, you better do it. And so that's just where I was at. I was like, okay, well, you know what, Lord? I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Shit's fucked up right now. I'm not really booking anything. Point me in the direction. I'm leaning on my faith here. And that was the Lord. I was like, hey, man, go over there. That'll provide you the same creative outlet that you want. You can form new relationships. And on top of that, you learning a new skill. So no matter what, whether you get another audition from this day moving forward or not, you're still going to be able to stand up like a man and take care of your family and do what you need to do. And so, although that experience of not being able to work as consistently as I would have liked to during that time, it provided me an even better life lesson regarding my faith and my willingness to, no matter what, stand on my own too as a man. And that's what I learned during that time. And so I think, yeah, it was unfortunate I wasn't able to work as consistently, but I walked away with something better than that. To where now, God forbid, if the same scenario presents itself, I'm gonna walk with a level of confidence and with my head held high, knowing, well, hey man, you know, that chapter, may be lying dormant right now, but you can go over here and you can get the same level of fulfillment as you would as if you were performing in front of an audience. Because it's the same kind of exchange, right? Being an artist is almost like preparing a meal. You sit there, you plan the meal out, you do the mise en place, which is getting everything in its place, making sure all of your ingredients and stuff are in place so that you can execute this dish the right way. So it's cooked the right way, it's seasoned the right way, it's presented beautifully, before the diner. And then you see the satisfaction of that person eating the meal and their stomach being full and them saying, hey, that was a great meal, thank you for that. I get the same kind of gratification from, presenting myself as a performer on screen. So I was able to tap into that. I was like, oh man, it's the same thing, but just a little different. So I'm glad I was able to have that experience. And, I developed some great friendships with people who I probably wouldn't have been able to establish great friendships and relationships with had I not gone to that school. Yeah. I mean, that's life. You know what I mean? Like, life throws things at you and you got to be able to roll off the punch. And if you're not able to roll off the punch, you got to be able to take the punch and keep moving forward. And as a man of faith, I've come to accept that and embrace that even more, especially as I've gotten older. I'm trying my best even now at 46 years old not to live in my ego. I know when to let go and to let God, as cliche as that, that phrase is nowadays, it's really true. You got to get to a point in your life where you go, you know what? I don't have the answers. I've tried everything. I've gone to every audition. I've called every casting director. I've had as many meetings with my agent as I possibly could have had. Nothing's panned out. All right, God, what do I do? Point me in a direction. What do I do? And if you're willing to humble yourself, and if you're willing to get down on your knees and release that and ask for that assistance and that guidance and that protection and that wisdom, it'll be given to you. Asking you shall receive. So that's what the Lord taught me in that moment. And I walked away from it not only a better performer, because now I'm even hungrier when I do get a job, but I walked away a better human being. So it was a valuable life lesson, and I'm grateful that I experienced it.
I want to ask you about Drumline, another classic. How did that come about? You getting a role in that?
Drumline came about. Well, I live in Atlanta, although I'm born and raised Chicagoan. I moved to Atlanta right after Smart Guy was canceled. I was traveling down to Atlanta during my hiatus weeks on Smart Guy and just hanging out. Um, I have family who are really, really successful music producers in the music industry. One of my cousins, Tricky Stewart, who's a producer of Umbrella for Rihanna, Single Ladies for Beyonce. He also produced Put a Ring on It for Beyonce. At that particular time, he had a production deal with LaFace Records. His artist at the time, God rest his soul, Sam Salter. After 12 before 6, if anybody knows who Sam Salter is, that was his artist. And so I was coming down to Atlanta just kicking it with my cousin Tricky and with his team there at Red Zone Entertainment, which what was called Red Zone at the time. And I was just becoming a part of Atlanta culture. So I was in the club hanging out with Dallas Austin. I was running into Jermaine Dupri. I was running into Rico Wade and Sleepy Brown and Ray and all those guys from the Dungeon Family and Outkast. And so I was becoming a part of that community. And I had already planned to move down to Atlanta, whether Smart Guy was going to continue to move forward or not, because I was just so impressed with the creative community that was there and seeing just so many like successful and affluent black people. Um, I've been around success before with our people, but I hadn't seen it like that, to where the mayor was black, the fire chief was black, police chief was black, the elected officials, the judges, the infrastructure was just us. It was a black mecca. So I wanted to be a part of that. All of my years of living in Los Angeles, although I definitely love Los Angeles and appreciate and love what it has done for me and provided for me, I never felt like I really belonged out there. I always felt kind of like a visitor. And when I became a part of that community, me and Dallas Austin got to be really, really cool. And then I think it was like one random night while we were all hanging out in a club or something. And he just told me, he said, "Hey man, I got this, we about to shoot this movie, about HBCU marching bands. I'm executive producing it. Um, and we doing it with Fox, and it's gonna be a big deal. Man, you need to call your agent and tell him you want to audition for it." So sure enough, I did. I called my agent. I said, "Hey, they're about to shoot, a major feature film down here. Like 20th Century Fox is about to put out a film about the black college experience, and I need to be up in that." So I auditioned, ended up getting cast in the role of what, Ernest, and yeah, man, it that was an experience. That was another film that I knew people were gonna like, but I didn't know it was gonna ultimately end up being as successful as it was, because again, studios back then, when it came to those kinds of films that were predominantly black cast, or had a black lead, the forecast was that it would perform well domestically, but I don't know if it's going to perform like that in the foreign market so well. And so when Drumline finally came out and performed really well at the theaters, I think we came in, I think we opened the same weekend as Ice Age or something like that. And every screen or every screen that we competed directly with Ice Age with, we won the audience. So Ice Age just had more screens across the country that they were showing their film on. But the numbers had shown that if we had the same amount of screens that they had being released, we could have possibly come in number one. That's how well that film did initially when it was released in theaters, and then it really took on a life of its own when it went to VHS, DVD, and then you just had a whole generation of kids who were coming out of high school looking to go into college, and now they're seeing this film and now they want the HBCU experience. So I think even enrollment at HBCUs went up exceedingly after Drumline came out, because nobody had really seen anything like that portrayed on the big screen. I mean, even for myself as somebody that grew up here, in the Midwest, I was familiar with HBCUs, but I wasn't that familiar with the culture of it because, HBCUs are southern, more or less a southern thing. Although I think they have one or two HBCUs like in the Midwest, but it's really, steeped in southern tradition, if you will. So I wasn't really aware of the pageantry and the beauty of all of the ancillary stuff um, revolving around, the higher education component of being in the HBCU. So the marching band, the fraternities, the sororities, all of that stuff. I think the only inkling that I'd ever gotten of that was like School Days, Spike Lee's film. But other than that, we hadn't seen that before. And we saw it in a different world. I'm sorry. We saw it with a different world, but we hadn't seen it, on a grand scale like that. So yeah, to be a part of Drumline, and to help, I guess, inspire a generation of students to want to come to HBCUs and get their education and have their experience there, their collegiate experience there. I'm honored. Shout out to Charles Stone the third. Shout out to Nick Cannon. Shout out to Orlando Jones, who was our fearless leader on that show. Who, when he relayed to me years later, fought a lot of quiet battles on our behalf to get us the respect that we were able to ultimately get. Um, Shout out to Dallas Austin, of course, because the story was loosely based on his life, his experience of being a drummer in high school. So, and shout out to the city of Atlanta, and for Clark University, and for who else, man? Morris Brown, Southwest DeKalb University, Southwest DeKalb High School. Pardon me, Southwest DeKalb High School in Decatur. Let me get that right. Otherwise, I will have some young kids in Atlanta looking to whoop my ass. So shout out to Southwest DeKalb. Shout out to FAMU. All of those HBCUs had students that were coming in and filling in, for the band. And so, to see all of those kids coming together to help tell this story, because it just wasn't, Nick he was the number one, but I always look at Drumline as a collective force of nature that really made an impact. So yeah, I'm so proud that I was a part of that film. And shout out to KK Psi. Shout out to KK Psi, Kappa Kappa Psi, Band Fraternity Incorporated, who I'm an honorary member of. I was just made an honorary member last year. I went to the KK Psi National Convention in Lexington, Kentucky. So shout out to all of my people from KK Psi. I love y'all.
Who are some of the people that auditioned for that movie? Because I know when I interviewed Silk the Shocker, he told me that he got offered a role to be in it, but he turned it down.
Silk an audition? I never knew that. I never knew that because when I auditioned, I was like part of the latter bunch of actors who were auditioned. I know that they had already cast Nick. They had already cast Zoe Zaldana. I knew Orlando was one of the names. But cats like myself, Omar Dorsey. Shout out to Omar Dorsey, who played our bus driver on Drumline, and who's gone on to just do major things as an actor. Shout out to Omar Dorsey, one of the most talented actors I've had the pleasure of working with and being able to call a friend. Um, who else? Yeah, I was like one of the last to be cast because I was considered to be a local hire. I live in Atlanta, so usually when a film comes to Atlanta, they already have their main principals, who they've cast, and usually when they cast locally, it's like for some of the more supporting roles, and it just so happened that I was living down there, and that character of Ernest was one of the more prominent supporting roles in the feature film. So yeah, it was a little bit of God work in that. That was a little bit of God doing his sprinkling of a favor on me for that situation.
Yeah, man, great movie, classic, man. But I want to ask you, I want to go back to earlier. You said you had two run-ins with Pac. Tell me about the second run-in you had with him, with Pac and Suge.
Oh, with Pac and Suge, yeah. So this was during the time that I was signed to Motown Records, and Andre Harrell had taken over Motown. I think this was the first year of his tenure there. And so it was all the buzz of black music that Andre was about to turn Motown around, or at least that's what they were hoping. And so Andre had all these big billboards along Sunset Boulevard where he was in the big chair, had the Motown sweater hanging over, and it had the slogan or the mantra at the bottom of it, and it was "It's on," and everybody was talking about it. So I believe it was the Soul Train Music Awards. I forgot which Soul Train Music Awards, but all of the acts from Motown and the executives, all of us were flown out from New York so that we could attend the Soul Train Awards, and so that the industry could see the fleet of artists, if you will, that Andre was going to be putting out during his tenure there. And I was one of them. And so Andre threw this big after party at this restaurant off of Sunset Plaza. And if anybody knows Sunset Boulevard, and particularly Sunset Plaza, there's a little strip on Sunset Boulevard called Sunset Plaza that basically has all of these kind of high-end hangout restaurants where people eat outside and, do the Hollywood bougie thing. It's like right there in the middle of all of the power and the affluence of Hollywood. And so Andre throws a Motown party at a restaurant there in Sunset Plaza, and everyone's there, and it's cracking. You got your industry who's who, and usually how these industry parties go, for people who aren't familiar with it, especially during award season, you hit 5 or 6 different parties in one night after the actual award show. So you kind of just bounce from party to party. So there's always a new crowd that circulated in and out of these parties. Well, I was only what, 18, 17, 18 at the time. So I couldn't go to too many parties where they would legally let me in. So me and my cousin Kevin, who was my guardian at the time and my road manager, we just decided to opt and just stay at the Motown party. It was already cracking anyhow. The food was there. I was able to, sneak a couple flutes of champagne, you know. So I was happy where I was at. Parties going. And the way that the club was is like it was kind of open, or the way that the restaurant is, it was kind of open where you could see outside on the street. So as I'm dancing with some young lady or whatever, and I happen to glance over to my right where the entrance of the restaurant is, and I just see all of these executives and industry folk just literally scrambling out of the door. And I mean at a feverish pace, like they leaving like the shit about to get shot up or something. So I'm looking around like, man, what the hell is going on? And so all of a sudden you see the two Bentleys pull up. I think Suge was in a red one and Pac was in a white one or something like that. So I'm looking, and then I see Suge and Pac get out, and Dre, and I think Dre was with him. I think Dre was with him too. And they start mobbing through the party, and they're asking where's Andre at. They're asking where's Andre. I don't know if they asked for Puff. I don't think they asked for Puff, but I know that they asked for Andre, and they asked for a couple of the other Motown executives who were former Uptown executives. And so I'm seeing them mob through the party, and I mean they doing the LA West Coast. They up in people's faces. They like, man, where so and so at? Oh, what you drinking? What you eating? Like they like that. It's pretty aggressive. So Pac comes towards the area where I was, because I was kind of, in the back. I was trying to stay low key because I was drinking champagne underage. So I wasn't trying to draw a whole bunch of attention to myself. I was trying to keep it low. And so all of a sudden, Pac just starts moving around me. And of course, I'm in amazement because it's Tupac. I'm like, oh my God, it's Pac. And as he's looking over people, looking around, and he just directly centers on me. Hey, little Mike, man, what you doing up in here, man? What you doing drinking? And he just, he and I had a quick laugh. I think he was really, I think he was amused at the fact that I was so young in there. I was probably one of the youngest people in there. I'm in there partying, dancing with a grown woman. I got a little fluted champagne or whatever. And I think he just got a big kick out of that. And then he remembered meeting me during that time when him and Janet came to the Jackson set. So that's when he hit me with the little mic. And no, it was cool, man. And I was like, man, what's up, Pac? Like, it wasn't no beef, although that whole bad boy death row thing was going on at the time. And although some executives from Motown caught like the residual aspect of that, due to their association with Puff or whatever, when it came to the artists, and particularly when it came to me, and Pac, Suge, Dre, they wasn't tripping on nothing. And when they realized that the people that they were looking for were no longer there or had scurried out of the restaurant, that they went on about their business, or they went to the next spot, I guess trying to find whoever it was they were looking for, you know?
Crazy. So they had everybody shook when they pulled up.
Hell yeah. Man, like Suge in particular back then, back during the Death Row era, and when Death Row was really active and LA was really active. Yeah, man, like Suge and Death Row, that was a force. Like, because they had cats within that organization that were represented on both sides. They're representing the blue flag and the red flag and everything else in between. You feel me? So they had a lot of LA street power and muscle. So whenever you would see any of those guys, it was like oh shit, these niggas here. Like I remember I kicked it at the Hotel Nico one time. It may have been during an All-Star game or something in Los Angeles, but I'll never forget it. It was at the Hotel Nico on it's on La Cienega Boulevard. It's now called, I think it's still called the SLS or whatever. But it was a Hotel Nico, and there used to be a Fat Burger. It's actually the Fat Burger where Pac shot To Live and Die in LA. It's been bulldozed down or whatever. But anyway, Hotel Nico was a big industry hangout, especially during event weekends where, everybody was in town. And so I'll never forget, man, I was sitting there chilling in the lobby of Hotel Nico, and I was just having a random conversation with John Sally, who at that time, I didn't even know he smoked or nothing like that. But John Sally was like from the Bulls and from the Detroit Pistons. So I was like tripping on the fact I'm sitting with John Sally, he's smoking a little doobie or whatever, and we kicking in. It's a party going on in the lobby. And then Suge walks in. And evidently he came there to see somebody, because he immediately walked into the area where everybody was congregating and hanging out and drinking. And he got at somebody, and a fight broke out, and it was cats hopping over the sofas, hopping over chairs. It was mayhem. But that was the kind of energy, that Death Row would bring, into certain situations. So I got a chance to see, all of that with, from with a front seat point of view. I was able to see a lot of that, activity that took place then. Really interesting. Really interesting.
When Big got killed, was you in LA?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was there. As a matter of fact, I would when Big got killed, my cousin Kevin and I were living in Los Angeles. We had just shot the pilot to Smart Guy. I'll never forget because we were living on a street. We were staying in this apartment in Koreatown that my mother had gotten us. She didn't really know Los Angeles like that, but she had us in this random ass apartment that she had booked for us in Koreatown. And I remember I was frustrated living there or staying there at the time because all of the parties where everything was happening was west of us. It was everything was in Beverly Hills. Everything was off of Fairfax, Mid Wilshire, that area. And the night that Big got killed, my cousin Kevin and I were actually going to meet up with my A&R director and my big brother at that time, Chuck Bone, who was a A&R executive at Motown. And he was all cool with the bad boy crew. And so he's like, yo, we about to go over to this party and that party. If y'all can make it, pull up. But Kevin and I ended up not pulling up because I think I had to maybe work or something the next day. But then that's when we got the call. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And Chuck had called me and Kevin to let us know what had happened to Big. And then he was letting us know that everybody that was from New York that was there was scrambling to get on flights to go back east. It was a serious situation because nobody knew the level of the threat or even where the actual threat came from. People, were speculating that it could have been from death row or to serve as some kind of retaliation or whatever, but nobody really knew. And seeing LA like that, like, you always got to play it careful because who you think may be the suspect in the situation may not actually be. There may actually be some whole other politics going on. So when things first crack off in LA like that, there's always this cloud of uncertainty that kind of lingers until the information starts trickling out. So everybody was really nervous, with being out there in LA like that and not knowing where the threat was coming from or to what level of threat it was. So it was and of course everybody was sad to learn that Big had gotten killed. I had the pleasure of meeting Biggie a couple of times, and man, he was so nice, man. Such a nice guy. And to be tragically killed like that, at such a young age, it was, we were all affected by it in some way.
And you said people were scrambling to get back to the East Coast.
Hell yeah. People were definitely scrambling. Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's so funny cuz well, not funny, but I saw a interview with Ed Lover years ago. And Ed Lover was talking about how, all of them when Big first got killed, everybody had rushed to Cedar Sinai Hospital where they were trying to save Big's life. And so pretty much everybody from New York was there in the emergency waiting room praying and waiting to receive news regarding his condition. And from what I recall from him in this interview, what he's saying is as soon as they found out, that he had passed, then that's when everybody began to, kind of scramble and figure out, well, shit, maybe I need to get up out of here because we don't know, what kind of threat this is or where it's coming from. And so I think he even, from what he had said, if I remember correctly, I think he had to catch a flight out of Long Beach Airport because like everybody was converged upon LAX and Burbank, just trying to get out. It was that kind of situation.
How was it like in LA when Pac got killed?
I'll be honest with you. I only remember it from an industry peer standpoint. So I remember people were like really, really shocked. Number one, that he was killed like that. Um, but LA, I remember LA going into like it was weird, man, because I think that's when I first started really learning about LA street culture. Even with me, spending a significant amount of time in LA as a kid and working out there, I wasn't active. I wasn't outside like that. I would go from the sound stage to the temporary residence that I was staying at. And rarely would I go south of Wilshire anywhere. You know what I mean? I think the only time I would really go south of Wilshire was when I would go to Harold and Bell's Creole restaurant off of like Jefferson and Crenshaw. But other than, or I'd go to West Angeles Church to attend Sunday service. You know what I mean? But I didn't really understand LA street politics back then. But that's when I began to learn about it because you just saw people start moving different. You know what I mean? And then you started hearing people tell you, hey man, don't go over there. Or don't kick it with this person. Let this kind of die down a little bit. It's a lot going on that you don't know about. You know what I'm saying? Whether they were industry people that I knew that were, maybe affiliated with Death Row or people from that camp, or whether it was just regular Los Angelinos that I knew that were more well versed in Los Angeles gang culture in particular. So man, all I really did, to be honest with you, I laid low. I went to work. I stayed in my apartment. You know what I mean? And I minded my own business, and I still do that now to this day at 46. Like I don't get involved in business wherever I go, where I'm working. That's where I'm working. I'm on my business. I leave the street stuff and all the politics and all of that energy. I leave that over there, and I just handle my business and keep my blinders on. Now I'm aware of the things that go on around me because I think as a man, period, you need to know what's going on around you. But as far as like, you know, getting deep off into this person's politics and this conflict and all, nah, because and especially when you saw people losing their lives over it, that's when I was really like, hell no, I'm staying as far away from that as possible. You know.
Did you have any moments where you almost got robbed?
No, LA was active, but I'll be honest with you, man. Like LA in the '90s for me, I never ran into any problems, man. And I was one of those guys. Well, number one, I was on TV, so I was recognizable. But man, people would tell you like I would go to Fox Hills Mall. I used to cruise up and down Crenshaw in my CLK when I first got that, when I bought my first Benz. You know, I would ride up and down Venice Boulevard to Venice Beach, get on PCH, then I ride down PCH to the 10, take the 10 to Crenshaw. That's when cats used to have the low riders out, like the scene in Boys in the Hood. Um, that's when cats would have the low riders out, or you be cruising in your car and stuff like that. And I never had any bad experiences though, because I minded my business. And then I wasn't trying to portray like I was a part of something or try to be on some tough guy shit. I'm a civilian. I'm going to act accordingly like I'm a civilian. I'm from Chicago. I'm not from LA. Like, I don't know the politics y'all got out here. Like, let me mind my business and keep my mouth shut and, give everybody the same level of respect that I would want. That's how I moved. I just moved respectful. And even to this day when I'm in LA or anywhere else, man, I move respectful. I don't get involved or entrenched in any of like that kind of drama like that. I let that stay over there. And if it's a cat that I'm around that's about that, I speak to that person respectfully and I keep it moving. But that's always been my MO, man. Like I don't, when I feel an energy around me or energies around me that don't sit right with my spirit, I will quietly exit the room. You won't even know that I've even exited. I will quietly leave the room and distance myself from anything that I feel could potentially serve as a hindrance to me or my family.
How was that like being in LA in the 90s?
Oh man. Oh man, we had a ton of fun, man. Like, man, I have so many great memories, from that era. Hanging out with OG, hanging out with our bro Merlin, God rest his soul. Um, hanging out with the other peers and colleagues, from Hollywood during that era. Like, I mean, man, we all had fun. We were kids making serious money on television, um, doing, really extraordinary things for people our age. And if you were able to find some balance in that, then you had a good time. When you started drinking the Kool-Aid and believing the hype and getting involved in things that you shouldn't involve yourself in, then that's when you would encounter unnecessary drama. But I always kept whatever that I was doing, I always kept it fun because I realized how much of a blessing it was to be in that position. Now I'm coming from Chicago. Ain't too you know what I'm saying? Like ain't too many kids, ain't too many people, coming out of that city, coming out of this city at that particular time that was, doing what I was doing. So I recognized the blessing off bat and was like, hey man, I need to do everything that I need to do in order for God to continue to keep blessing me. So I wouldn't fuck around, man. I do my job and I keep my nose clean and be respectful towards people and I collect my check and go home.
So you knew Merlin Santana. You two was cool.
Oh yeah. I knew Merlin really well. That was my bro, man. That was my brother. That was me, Omar, Omar's clique, which was comprised of his cousin, Stylie Ray, Rick, Taz. Who else? Um, no, we were all crew. We all used to hang out together when we would rap from work because everybody would kind of rap from their jobs at the same time, like, around 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon or evening. And then we'd leave whatever lots we were working at. And then we'd meet up someplace. A lot of times we would meet up at Omar's house because we would order pizzas and play video games and, we smoke and hang out. Merlin would come through there from time to time, or, we would go to Merlin's crib. Merlin stayed. He had a penthouse apartment in Beverly Hills, like right off of like Cannon Drive or something like that, like right off of Wilshire and Cannon. And so we would go over there, and hang out with Merlin from time to time. And, we were all into video games heavy then. So we played a 007 Golden Eye, and just, just shoot the shit and just be kids, really. We were all still kids. No, we were working as professionals and making really good money, but we were still 18, 19-year-old kids when it was all said and done. So we were doing that kind of stuff, and Merlin was a part of a part of that crew. Yeah, I miss Merlin. He was a great guy, man.
He was a wild dude.
Yeah, Merlin was wild. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that who was around him during that time. But his energy, it didn't make me nervous because I was familiar with it. Like Merlin was like your typical young fly Dominican from Washington Heights. And so I was familiar with that already. With me living in New York and, I spent a lot of time uptown, like Harlem and the Bronx and, kicking it with Dominican cats and Jamaican cats and Puerto Ricans and, and everybody else. So I was used to that. I was used to that energy. I was used to that kind of personality that he had. But, Merlin was he was a great guy and easy to get along with, but he was young and had a lot of fire in his spirit and wasn't gonna let you talk to him crazy in any kind of way. Um, because that was his thing. He always looked at it like people thought we were soft because we were on TV. And so Merlin always wanted to shut that shit down with anybody that would want to come and test us like that. Me personally, I didn't care. I didn't care who thought I was soft, who thought I was the hardest nigga on the planet. I didn't care because at the end of the day, I just wanted to make my money and go home and keep it moving. But Merlin was one of those guys that was big on respect. And then, coming from the neighborhood that he came from, and being used to a certain type of energy, that was kind of what he kind of gravitated towards out there in LA. Um, but the one thing that we all didn't know at the time was that the energy where we from, street energy from wherever we from, Chicago, New York, or whatever, that energy is different out there. And if you didn't know how to maneuver around in their culture like that during that time when Los Angeles was really active, you know, bad things could possibly happen. So, it was unfortunate what happened to Merlin because he was out of all of us, out of our generation of young actors that came out, He was the most talented out of all of us by far. Anytime I've competed against Merlin in an audition, I never won. Never. He would always get the role. He was far more superior as an actor than any of us in our little crew, and that Omar included. And Omar is a beast. Like me and Omar are not any slouches. You put a script in front of us, you put a camera in front of us, we gonna go. You know what I'm saying? And we gonna play at a high level. But Merlin was a different level, and he was at that point where um he was beginning to get that recognition from producers because he was a nice looking dude, he was built. Um, he was like the Michael B. Jordan before Michael B. Jordan. He had that kind of energy, and Hollywood was more or less trying to steer him over into that to where you were gonna start seeing him in feature films and things of that nature. Um, but you know, unfortunately, man, he just didn't stay in the house, man. Like, he chose to kind of be out there a little bit more, than the rest of us, and I think he was carefree like that because nobody thought that anything bad could happen to us like that. Like, we all kind of figured, hey, everybody sees us on TV and everybody knows we're not a threat in any kind of way. So I think for all of us, we kind of took it light. And that moment of where we all woke up, and realizing that, hey man, life is not a game, is when Merlin got killed. Absolutely. And our other friend Brandon Adams, I've known Brandon for years. He was also in the car with Merlin. I think he took a slug to the shoulder, damn near bled out on Crenshaw or whatever street that was, because they were in the jungle, so that might have been La Brea that they were on. But yeah, man, when that happened, we were all very sad because although we were peers and colleagues and we competed against one another from time to time for certain roles, we all loved one another, man. We all recognized that, we were extraordinary in our own right, in the positions that we were in our lives, and in the blessings that have been bestowed upon us. So we all, to the best of our ability, tried to look out for one another and run together like a crew. But yeah, Merlin was, he always marched to the beat of his own drum. But unfortunately, it just came to a head with a unfortunate tragic incident.
Unfortunate, man. R.I.P. to Merlin, man.
Yeah, R.I.P. to Merlin, man. He's great guy, man. Fly dude. And we still miss him dearly. Every once in a while when me and Omar get together, some of my friends, and when Merlin's name is brought up, we all speak very highly and favorably about him because he stood out of our crew. He was one of those guys that really stood out, and you could see that he was on the trajectory to become one of those guys. Hell yeah.
I saw an interview of yours where you made a comment about how your biggest financial mistake was buying the Benz. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, I wouldn't say it was a mistake because I bought the car with my hard-earned money. But oh, when you young like that and you just coming into money, you're excited. You want attention, and particularly with me back then, I was a little ladies man. So I was looking for that kind of attention, and so when I got the opportunity to buy that car, um I wasn't thinking about it from a mature point of view. I was just looking at it like, man, I got the CLK, it's got the Lorenza kit, I'm gonna take this shit to Vegas, I'm going crazy. It was that kind of thing. um but what I later realized was that it brought the wrong kind of attention. And how I came to that realization was that I'd moved down to Atlanta, shipped my car down there, and I'd started music production company called Boob Tube Productions with my man Focus, who is now one of Dr. Dre's producers. He's done a lot of great work with Dre, multi-Grammy award winning. Shout out to Focus. Um, we had moved down to Atlanta together to pursue our music thing. And so I had my my CLK with me. And mind you, I was one of the only people in the country that had that car at that time. It was like me and one other person. As a matter of fact, the car that Mercedes actually ended up giving to me was Michael Eisner's car. He was on the waiting list for it and he was the first up for it, but he ended up not wanting the car. So I was second on the waiting list after Michael Eisner, who's a former chairman of Disney. And so I took the car, kitted it out. Lorenza kitted it out. And so when we were in Atlanta, there was a producer that I was working with. I won't mention his name or anything like that, but it was a producer that I was trying to kind of persuade to come and work with me and focus. And um, he came from New York. And so while we were there in Atlanta, we went out to a club and we hung out and, I bought bottles and we kicked it. Like we had a time. Then everybody that hung out with us ended up coming back to my penthouse and everybody kind of just passed out, on some young shit, just hanging out. So the next day, when everybody gets up and everybody's leaving to go back to their apartments or whatever, he was staying at a hotel down the street. So he woke me up out of my sleep and he's like, yo, Weave, can you, drive me down the street to the hotel? I want to take a shower, da da da. I'm kind of hungover. I'm like, oh man, give me a couple hours. Let me get a couple hours more sleep and, and I'll take you to the hotel. Well, this guy didn't care about any of that. And he proceeds to take my keys and drives off in my shit. And instead of driving back down to the hotel responsibly, he decides he wants to open up the car on one of the more curved roads in Atlanta and wraps my car around a pole. And thankfully, he didn't get seriously injured or killed because he could have killed himself at the rate of speed that he was going and at the turns that he was hitting. So I'm thankful to God that, he wasn't killed in that because, a car is nothing. Cars can be replaced, but human life, as we all know, can't be replaced. So I'm thankful to God that it wasn't something even more, tragic than what it was. But yeah, and when the car got totaled, and when I really began to assess or go back in my mind the kind of attention that I was getting when I had the car, I was like, oh no. Because a couple of times when I was driving it, I could tell that somebody wanted to jack me a couple of times. One time in LA in particular, I almost got carjacked and I saw it and I sped off. But I saw them about to reach and like try to get the car. But I never told anybody that. But I just made a mental note in my mind, like, man, you can't take this shit everywhere. You know what I'm saying? You got to be real careful. So that incident coupled with the car finally getting totaled, I was just like, hey man, that wasn't worth the money that I threw at that car. It really only, gave me anxiety thinking that I was always gonna get carjacked, or it attracted just the wrong kind of attention. Even when it came to women and stuff, like they were more into the car than they were me. So it's like, nah, man, I don't want people around me because I'm driving a certain kind of car and I got a chain on and and I got this Rolex on. And I mean, that's why now, I don't wear any kind of jewelry or anything like that because at that young age, I learned that, man, that don't mean shit, man. That's just a whole bunch of stuff that you have around your neck and on your wrists that just makes you a potential target, and when you get older and when you start, when you become a family man like I am now and, you taking care of people, you, excuse me, you can't play with your life like that. It's people that need you. So, I came to realize as I matured and grew older, less is more. And yeah, it was that situation that taught me that for sure.
Good lesson to learn, man. I mean, you right about that. I mean, it brings the wrong attention.
Oh yeah. And I was wilding too. It was like, man, I was driving to Vegas in that car. Like, there's plenty of times I could have killed myself on the I-15. Cause me and Omar, when we would get through shooting Smart Guy, we would get in our cars and we ride to Vegas. We would drive to Vegas and we'd be there all weekend. So we're kids on the 15 going like a buck 10, a buck 20 in these cars in the desert, wilding. You know what I mean? Just having fun, just being young, but That's what it was. It was like, oh, I'm in the CLK, man. I'm about to open this shit up, and just being stupid and reckless and not weighing, the consequences of what possibly could have happened. Because even before becoming a father or anything like that, like, I'm still my mother's son. What if something happened to me where I, killed myself, and my mother has to live with that pain. You know what I mean? So when it was all said and done, when the car finally got totaled, it was almost like, a weight had been lifted from me because I didn't have to, and then the maintenance and the upkeep of it, you take it in for an oil change and, a tire rotation. That's damn near $2,000, like for what? You know what I'm saying? As soon as you drive it off the lot, it depreciates. And unbeknownst to me at that time, then I put the Lorenza kit on it, so it depreciates even more. So you just out there with a car with big ass rims, flashy, looking like a Target. And after that, I was like, no, I'm good. And that's why now I just choose to, I like nice things, and me and my family, we have nice things, but it's not about being flashy, and it's not about throwing it up in people's faces to get your attention. I buy these nice things now for myself and my family because I enjoy them. I enjoy looking at them and riding in them. It has nothing to do with trying to keep up with the Joneses or trying to impress anybody. Like, I'm so glad I'm past that stage of my life.
Yeah, man. But speaking of Omar, I want to ask you about him, man. Real good dude, man. Great guy. But both of y'all being young Hollywood actors, and you look at all the other young Hollywood
Yeah,
actors and how they turned out. How did y'all avoid all that? Getting
yeah.
in trouble and, all the other things, man.
No, I mean, the way that Omar and I avoided it, especially when we were working on Smart Guys, we just stuck together. It's like when we would rap, we would go to each other's cribs. Like he maybe bring his crew over to my crib. We play video games. We order pizza. We smoke. We chill out. Get ready to go to work the next day. Um, we weren't the kind of guys that were just outside like that. I mean, anytime, because we all lived in the valley. I lived in Studio City in like North Hollywood. Omar lived like deeper in the valley, like Sherman Oaks. Sometimes he would live as far as like Northridge or Chatsworth. So we were like always in the valley. We rarely came over the hill into like Hollywood. And usually all of the crazy shit that was happening back then was like happening in Hollywood at these clubs, whether it was the Roxbury or whether it was Dublin's or the Key Club, which would, I think back then was Billboard Live, and that whole scene, the Viper Room, all of that stuff was on Sunset, and that's where you would find, that drug culture, and that's where you would find the party culture. And I think for both Omar and myself, we were just never really into that, man. We wanted to be recognized as great actors, and we wanted to be taken seriously. And so for us, going over lines at the dining room table, the living room table, while smoking and bullshitting and eating pizza, that was our fun. It was about iron sharpens iron, the both of us getting better, showing up the next day to make sure that we really stuck out on the show to where they gave us more opportunities. It wasn't about trying to get out there and turn up and get turned out, because we had seen a generation who had already gone through that, right? And then Omar and I were both blessed where we had parents who were already in the game. So, his father, Cuba Gooding Sr., his mother, Shirley Gooding, amazing mother. These are, and then my mother, they have been with us since we were kids and instilling these kind of principles in us. Not only as working professionals, but as human beings, and more particularly as young black men. We were already told, like, hey, these opportunities don't come to y'all like that anyhow, so don't fuck it up. You know what I mean? Like, stay on the straight and narrow, like, stay focused. And so we knew um the kind of responsibility that we had. And we also knew that we had a public image. We knew that we had a generation of kids that looked like us, that were looking to us, you know what I'm saying, for inspiration. And the last thing that we wanted to do was let them down by acting stupid or being ignorant. Like, we took our roles on and off the screen very seriously. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we're still here, to this day. The work always came first after family, and that's how we kept it. And the partying and all of that, we kept it to a minimum, and we had some fun. Like I said, we went to Vegas. We gambled and went to some of the best casinos, and went to this place and that place. But when it was time to go home, we went home. Then that was it. And when it was time to, when you had enough to drink, put the bottle down. Hey, you smoked enough, put the blunt down, man. Like, let's focus. Now it's time to go to work. And we never allowed our extracurricular activities and our partying to bleed into our jobs. We still came to work, man. We could have been hanging out till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning the night before. But when that call time at 9 o'clock, when we report to Disney and we having a table read, or we doing a producer's run through or a network run through, you best believe we on point. You ain't even gonna know that I was up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, because I'm still coming in there focused. So, it was just different with me and Omar. Like, we've always, strive for excellence, and we've always taken the craft seriously. So, and let me say this too. Because this is real. It's also the power of prayer. We had people praying over us. You know what I'm saying? That's what I can attribute. One of the main things that I contribute to us not getting, turned out and becoming one of those casualty stories. Man, we had members of our family, we had our communities, we had our friends praying over us and for us and on our behalf. And so, even if there were times where we could have walked into a situation, keeping it real, not to get all spiritual religious, but the blood of Christ was all over us, man. Wasn't no harm coming to us. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's what I can really attribute to not only our safety and our well-being, but our success. We had people praying over us, and that's real.
And you've been in Hollywood so long, I want to ask you, have you ever been offered a role that you was against, that went against what you believe in, your morals? Like, have you ever got a role and you was like, nah, man, I can't do this, man?
Yeah, yeah. I've had roles presented to me that I've had to respectfully decline, because they just didn't. I don't know. I didn't feel confident in myself as an actor that I would be able to portray them, because it was such a far stretch from who I am and what I ultimately care to represent. And so there were times when there was one particular role that an agent wanted me to audition for, and they wanted me to come in a dress. The character was like a streetwalker, um, or a sex worker, I should say. Pardon me, not to offend anybody out there who's ever experienced this or gone through this, but he was like a cross dressing sex worker. And nothing against the LGBTQ community, nothing like that. Like, I have close friends and family who are representatives of the community, but I people that I love, and the LGBTQ community has always embraced me, and I've always embraced them. So it's nothing like that. But it was the depiction of the role. It wasn't like it wasn't about telling a story. It was about exploitation. It was a story that didn't carry any heart and soul to it. It was just about hypersexualization. And I just didn't feel that that was something that I wanted to represent. I didn't feel that it would do me justice. I didn't feel that the community that the writer was attempting to represent was going to do them any justice. And so when you come across situations like that, as a professional and as a human being, if you're not comfortable with doing something, then all you have to do is just professionally and respectfully decline. And that was one of the only times that I've been approached like that, because immediately after having that experience, I told my agent at the time, I was like, hey, don't put me in a position like that again. Like, you read this script before me. We know how this script looks, feels, and sounds. Don't put me in a position like that again, to where I have to look like the bad guy to a casting director, or I have to look like I have a problem, you know what I'm saying, with what the script is about. I was like, it's not that I have a problem with anything that this character is supposed to represent. It's the way by which the character is being represented and how the character was written. And when it comes to that, when it comes to representation, I feel that, and as an actor, I feel that I can play any role. Like if another role comes around to where a character may be represented in that fashion, and if it's written a certain kind of way, I may entertain. I may, audition for the role or what have you, or at least take a meeting about it to find out more about it and what it's supposed to represent. But just to be exploitive and just to be, messy and just to throw something out there for shock value and ultimately which disrespects the people that you claim you're trying to represent. No, I'll never allow myself to do anything like that.
One Call Away, another classic. How did that record come about?
Thanks, man. Yeah, One Call Away. That record came about. Shout out to my man Poon Daddy. Poon Daddy used to be on the radio with Ludacris in Atlanta. They had the Chris Lover Lover and Poon Daddy show on Hot 97 in Atlanta. And so I knew Poon and Chris and Lala. Shout out to Lala. They were all on the radio, so I knew them from my Motown days. And this is before Ludacris became, a huge global rap star, all of that. He was a radio personality in Atlanta. And so I had an established rapport with them. I was always cool with this, disturbing the peace. And so when Chris finally blew up, then DTP became a label. Shaka Zulu, his manager, they had created Def Jam South, I believe. And DTP had an imprint over there. And so Poon Daddy had become an A&R. So I was out in Los Angeles filming The Lady Killers with Tom Hanks and Marlon Wayans, and which was directed by Joel and Ethan Coen, the Coen brothers. And 2 days before I went to work, I went out to a little industry party just to hang out because I was living in Atlanta. And with me coming out to LA, I was like, well, I'm only going to be out here for a few days working on this film. Let me hit a couple events, network with some people, that kind of thing. So at this party, I ran into Poon. And, we kicking the shit, having a conversation. He's like, yo, Weave, man, what you doing tomorrow? I was like, nothing. I'm gonna be at the hotel. He was like, man, come to Larrabee West Studios. Larrabee West Studios at that time was located off of Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. And Chingy was recording there. And Chingy already had some heat with him because Right There was being played on Los Angeles radio every 2 minutes. That song was just everywhere. And so Poon, when I got to the studio, he introduced me to Chingy. Chingy and I played some pool together, shot the shit or whatever. And then he went back into his studio. And then that's when Poon approached me about it. He said, yo, man, we got this record called One Call Away. This is probably going to be Chingy's third single, but we're looking at this single as being the one that kind of helps him to cross over and really wrangles in his female audience. And so we got an R&B hook to it. Man, they want, at the time, Marcus Houston was out. I think Omarion was out doing his thing. There was another artist signed to Capitol Records named Houston. And there were maybe a couple other male artists out at that time that were doing their thing. So Capitol Records was looking to recruit one of these name, singers, R&B artists. But Poon was like, man, I think you can kill it. You know what I mean? Can you just come in and just demo it? He's like, just come in and just demo it. Put a reference vocal down. Cause I don't think there was even a reference vocal like that yet for One Call Away. So I hadn't been in the studio in a while. I love recording. I wanted the opportunity in the shot to be a part of his record. So I think 2 days later, on my lunch break from working on the Lady Killers, we were shooting in Glendale, California, where the location was. And Poon was able to book a studio, ironically enough, at Enterprise Studios on Magnolia Boulevard, which is the same exact studio that we recorded the I'll Be There song in the Jacksons miniseries. So literally, like that studio that we shot in the Jacksons miniseries with Billy D. Williams, that was the same studio that I recorded One Call Away in on my lunch break. So it was crazy. So it was like a full circle kind of moment. Anyway, I sang the song down maybe like 5 or 6 times. And then I told Poon, I was like, man, I gotta go. I was like, lunch is up. I'm working with the Coen brothers. I gotta go, bro. Took a cab back to Glendale. Maybe like a week or so later, Poon calls me and he's like, yo, man, you killed it. Everybody loves your version of the record. I think they may have demoed out with a couple other artists, but they ultimately, after putting together a focus group and I guess asking the focus group which version they preferred, um, Capitol went with my version. And so that record came out and did what it did. And, very proud to be associated with that record. So blessed that I was able to contribute the little that I did to it. Thankful to Chingy for giving me an opportunity to feature on his record. Thankful to DTP, to Chris, Shaka, Poon, all of those guys for, giving me the opportunity to be on it. So, and I'm glad that the public liked it. Shout out to and thank you to, the listening audience out there that really embrace my version and my vocal. I'm greatly appreciative of that.
Yeah, man. And speaking of that, ATL, how did that come about?
Yeah, I was at ATL, another Dallas Austin produced film. Um, that one, same kind of thing. Well, Dallas had told me about ATL when we were wrapping up Drumline, because he was like, "Hey, man, I got another one, the pipeline that you may want to get down with." But at that time, it was called Jelly Roll, and Jelly Roll, the title of ATL, it was called Jelly Roll because there was a um there was a skating rink in Atlanta. I think it was called Jelly Roll. Yeah. And that's where like TLC was discovered. That's where Outkast and like the first generation of the Dungeon family used to hang out at, Rico Wade and all of them. So that was like that skating rink was an Atlanta staple. Or it was kind of like a historical landmark when you're talking about early Atlanta black music, particularly like LaFace, So So Def, Rowdy Records. Like that's where all of those young artists used to fellowship and congregate at. And so when the auditioning process, when casting started taking submissions for the role, again, I was one of the last people to be cast because I was a local in Atlanta. And I think Tip, the role of Rashad had already been guaranteed to him because he had a relationship with Will Smith and with Charlie Mack. And, they were trying to help him uh, transition over into becoming, a movie star. So, Lauren, she was already cast. I think the majority of the cast was already in Atlanta getting ready to film before I had been cast as Teddy. I was probably like the last one that was cast. And that experience of working on that film was great. Working on ATL was like working on a 3 month long video shoot. It was incredible, man. Like, Atlanta's who's who came out to support us, people from the music community, with Chris Robinson directing it. It had that music video feel. Um, our base camp where the trailers and all that stuff was at. It was like one big party, man. And we had a ball. And that's what really registers on screen. I think that really hits home for a lot of people. People could really tell that we were genuinely having a good time and that we were genuinely enjoying each other's company. And the film turned out great. ATL was one of the best experiences that I've had, as a working professional, because I was able to be a part of the film that celebrated the culture of Atlanta. And Atlanta means a lot to me in being able to contribute to the creative history there. And so I was honored to be a part of that.
How was it like being on set for that? I know that had to be crazy. I can only imagine, yo.
Oh, it was dope. No, like I said, it was like a 3 month long music video, like a music rap video. So it was like every day it was a different rapper that was coming to like visit Tip and hang out. And his trailer would be smoked out. And then Big Boy, I remember one time when we were on location at Cascade, the skating rink, and we were doing all the skating scenes. And we were doing take after take, shot after shot. So physically, it would wear you down. And man, Big Boy was so player about it. He had a masseuse come through. He had a masseuse come through and a manicurist that was on deck all day, just on base camp. And if you wanted a massage, if you wanted your feet done, your fingernails done, whatever, get a manicure, get a neck massage, that woman that was there that hold it, she took care of like the whole cast. And it was just cool player shit that happened like that, all the time. Like, Tip took us over to when we first assembled as a cast, to show us like the real Atlanta. He took us to Bankhead, um, took us to Bankhead Seafood, took us to Simpson Road, showed us his stomping grounds. And that's what helped to really build up that camaraderie, and the relationships that we still have to this day. Cause I mean, shit, like me and Jackie, we working on the shot together now. I recently just saw Tip at the launch of 106 in Sports in Atlanta, and we caught up. I see Lauren, from time to time if I'm in LA. I definitely see Evan a lot, whenever I'm in LA. Al B, who played Brooklyn, it's a great friend of mine. Um, so we all got along great, like peas and carrots, man. I love all of those guys.
Yo, who was behind the concept of that video? Stay with me. I always wanted to know that, yo. The T-shirt and you having a crush on the T-shirt. Who idea was that?
Oh, that shout out to Chuck Bone, my A&R director. Shout out to Chuck Bone. That was Chuck's idea. He was like, "Yo, you should have a video to where like, you got a crush on your school teacher, like your school teacher's hot, and and then you go into this dream sequence fantasy of like dancing with your teacher and dancing suggestively with your teacher." And that was his whole concept, and it worked because it's like it was a little playful high school crush kind of thing. And the original Stay With Me was produced by Rodney Jerkins and written by Horace Grant. Or not Horace Grant, Horace Brown. I'm sorry, Horace Brown. And the remix that we did was produced by another producer out of New Jersey at the time named Kevin Dean. And me and my man Roger Green and Charles Barrett, we wrote that record together, the remix that we did another video for. So yeah, man, I've been really, really blessed. I've had some amazing experiences, some amazing opportunities that have been put before me. I've worked with some equally amazing people, um, that I've also learned from. Um, an amazing mother who has protected me and looked out for me since day one. I have a very supportive family, great friends. Um, and I got God on top of all of that, man, who, continues to guide me and bless me, um, even when I may not be as deserving of it. I have such an amazing God that continues to walk with me and bless me and protect me on this journey. And so I'm just really appreciative, man. I've been in this industry now for 40 years. Yeah. Yeah, I'm 46 now. So actually 41 years. I'm sorry, because I got my first job at like 5. So yeah, man, and I'm still here. I'm still here by the grace of God. So very, very happy.
And you said you only 46. That's crazy, yo. That shocked me, yo.
Hey, man, I mean, I will say though, when you do get in your 40s, um, reality begins to hit, as it relates to your own mortality and realizing that you're getting older, and especially when you have kids and you see your children growing. But even with that, man, I wake up every day just with a sense of gratitude and a level of enthusiasm of just wanting to get after it every day, to just want to be better each and every day, better than I was yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Trying to put more points up on the board, trying to, go to new heights and new levels in my life, both personally as well as professionally. So I'm just so grateful. And now I'm here on Art of Dialogue, doing it real big, man.
Yo, how can I get Stay With Me on iTunes, yo? I remember like 2 years ago I tried to find it. I couldn't find it, bro. I was trying to download it.
I'll keep it real with you. When it comes to my music and the stuff that I released on Motown, if anybody is interested in hearing that stuff, you guys just need to hit up Motown. I don't know why, because when it came to Love Ambition, like damn near a whole petition had to be put together from fans of that song to get Motown to have the music available. So, I mean, if people really want to, hear the music like that I did during my tenure with Motown, I would strongly advise people to, reach out to Motown, hit them up on their social media or whatever, and be like, hey, why isn't Jason's material on iTunes or, on Tidal or whatever? I don't know why that is, but and I've never reached out to them and asked them why or begged them or inquired, because I was just like, whatever, I had my tenure with them and it was cool, but whatever. But for those who are interested, yeah, please hit up Motown. And for people who are just interested in me as an artist in general, I want to let you guys know I am going to be releasing some new music soon. I'm working on it right now. I'm just going to start dropping singles. um I don't know if I'm gonna put like a collective body of work out yet, because people aren't really into albums. I may release an EP when it's all said and done, but for right now, I just want to start releasing singles and just putting music out there and getting reacquainted with my audience again. Who had already been following me when I was on Motown. So yeah, everybody, please be on the lookout for that, because I'm going to be doing that. I have some, of course, we have The Shy that's on right now. This is the eighth and final season. This is the reason why I'm here in Chicago right now. We are filming the eighth and final season of The Shy. It's going to be very memorable. I think everybody's gonna love it when we get through working on it. I don't have any dates as to when that's coming out yet, but just keep your eyes out for that. I have some other things in the pipeline as well. Hopefully, that I'll be able to make some announcements on soon. A project that I'm working with my man Keenan Thompson, an animated project that hopefully we'll be announcing soon through the trades. I'm also working with 85 South, my guys DC, Chico, Los, all of those guys. I'm working on something with them. So, but it's a lot of great things in the works, man. The only thing I ask, man, for people out there who genuinely, support me and have been riding with me all this time, y'all just keep praying for me. Um, your support and everything that means the world to me. But when people send up a prayer for you, for you to be protected and for the Lord to guide you and to continue to bless you, I mean, that means even more to me. So, please y'all just continue to pray for me and my family. Um, if you see me out in the streets, I'm approachable. I'm a cool guy. Like, don't be an asshole about it. But I'm one of those kind of people where I love to interact with my fans and people who have supported my work throughout the years. So if any of you all out there happen to run into me, say what's up, man, because that'll give me the opportunity to shake your hand and look you directly in your face uh and say thank you. So yeah, I'm just very, very just honored and blessed to still be here doing this, doing what I love to do. And I pray that the Lord just continues to give me more opportunities and many more years on this earth to experience it.
Yes, indeed, man. Great interview, man. Great interview. Very insightful, man.
All right, man. Thank you so much, man. Hey, I appreciate you. I'm gonna continue to watch Art of Dialogue. Like I said, man, I salute you and I commend you for the types of interviews that you do. You have in this new age of new media, so many people are always trying to put content out there that's like clickbait content. But you have a lot of journalistic integrity, man, and with the lines of questioning that you present, the respect that you have for the people that you interview. I just want to let you know, man, that I respect you and I appreciate you, brother, and I wish you nothing but the best moving forward. Um, do me a favor too, man. Tell all of your guests that I've enjoyed watching personally, like Gene Deal to Chopper City to Dylon to, man, who else? There's so many. But just so you brothers know, man, I love your interviews, guys, and No, I wish everybody the best out there. And thank you to all the fans and just everybody for rocking with me, man, throughout all of these years, whether I've been, at a peak or whether I've been laying low in a valley waiting for my next opportunity. I appreciate all y'all for just sticking with me, man, and rocking with me. So God bless y'all. Thank you.